On the 10th day of the zombie outbreak, I rejected George's confession. Unexpectedly, he turned around and pushed me into the midst of the zombies. Then, holding his so-called dear younger sister in his arms, he said to me, "I've awakened my superpower. You, a burden, can get lost now." 01. At this moment, I was pushed out of the car by George and fell heavily to the ground. My entire back was stabbed by glass shards. The shadows of a large group of zombies appeared around me, and I could only watch helplessly as he and Layla drove away. There was no time to be angry about their betrayal. I told myself that I had to stay calm, especially at such a moment. While holding my breath, I gripped the stun gun in my hand tightly and my gaze fell on the stairs of the overpass not far away. I had exhausted almost all of my physical strength in the previous battle. Moreover, these zombies had clearly evolved compared to those a few days ago. They were much more agile in speed. Those that I had knocked down earlier actually all regained their mobility in a short period of time. Sweat dripped down my forehead and ran down my cheeks. I took out my phone, pressed the emergency call number, turned on the speakerphone, and with all my strength, threw it behind the zombies in the second before the ringtone rang. Beep, beep, beep. Some of the zombies immediately turned around when they heard the commotion and crouched on the ground in a strange posture, gnawing and biting. Taking advantage of this gap, I did a forward roll, jumped up, and severely struck the heads of the zombies with the stun gun. Then I quickly ran towards the stairs of the overpass. However, I couldn't match their speed. When I climbed onto the overpass, a group of zombies chased after me from behind. They let out ear-piercing roars, as if they were summoning their companions. As expected, all the zombies below looked up in my direction and then rushed up frantically. This was the second time I felt despair. The first time was when that brainless Layla opened the school gate on the third day of the zombie outbreak, causing some homesick students to run out. At that time, we only thought it was a virus similar to the one that appeared 30 years ago. I, along with several teachers who hadn't had time to leave, went out to get medical masks, protective suits, and other supplies. When we came back, there were already corpses lying all over outside the school gate. Blood flowed on the ground along their bodies. Those young faces were all filled with expressions of horror, and every pair of eyes was full of despair. The students in the teaching building were also frightened and hugged each other, crying loudly. We reported the situation to our superiors and received the reply that we should quickly dispose of the corpses uniformly. There were no extra words, which made it difficult for every teacher among us to accept. There were a total of 77 lives. At that moment, I suddenly began to doubt myself. Did I really have the ability to protect them? No. I was about to have the same fate as them. My arm was grabbed by a filthy hand. While my sleeve was being torn, another zombie took a bite at my neck. Just as I was about to bid farewell to this world, a searing heat burned my hand. The zombies in front of me let out howls and retreated one after another. "Jump down," a voice came from below. Without thinking much, I jumped off the overpass and landed right on a jeep truck. The zombies on the bridge jumped down right after me. I was stuffed with a machete in my hand and swung it without hesitation. Attack their heads. Second, keep using the flamethrower. Fourth, quickly lower the speaker. The car made a sharp turn and I almost fell out. The man beside me pulled me and raised the flamethrower, spraying flames at the zombies beside the car. Eardrum-piercing rock music blared from the speaker, and the zombies behind us were attracted by it. Only then were we able to escape smoothly. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jason. Eleanor. We shook hands, and only then did I notice that the back of my hand had blistered, and there was also a distinct pain in my ear. "Sorry, it was a last resort. Thank you for saving me." Compared to these minor injuries, my life was more important. The car made several twists and turns and finally stopped at a popular online check-in place in the city, a luxurious villa. Unlike what it looked like online, the outside of the villa had been reinforced layer by layer. The electric fence was visually more than 5 meters high, and the gate was bulletproof. My heart sank. Today, I went with George and Layla to pick up the bulletproof door and the electric fence. After getting the goods, I asked the two of them to go back first. George offered to go with me to pick up vegetables and flour. After leaving the flour mill, we encountered zombies. George, who was originally powerless, suddenly became fierce and tipped down a zombie with his bare hands. At that time, I was still in the car. When he was at a disadvantage, I stepped on the gas pedal and knocked down the zombie in front of him. And Layla came back at this moment. She was so scared by the scene in front of her that she was frozen in place. Seeing that she was surrounded by zombies, I could only get out of the car to save her, but I didn't expect that after she got in the car, she directly closed the car door, and that scumbag George actually told me that he had awakened his superpower and left me there to die. Eleanor, coming quickly. Jason and the others also went out to look for supplies today. I took the box of instant noodles from his hand with one hand and found that there were obvious bloodstains on it. There were about 40 or 50 people in the villa, and children of kindergarten age accounted for more than half of them. When their parents entrusted them to us, they had already been bitten. My heart felt heavy, and I blurted out involuntarily, July 15th, on that day. A female student I was in charge of didn't die immediately after being bitten. She held my hand and said, "Teacher Eleanor, tell my mom that I will always love her." Although her pupils had already dilated, she kept shouting, "Mom, Mom." The man in front of me looked surprised, and then showed a suspicious expression. Second, fourth, come over for a review. The others take care of the children. The man's name was Isaac. He looked good, but he was very cold. It was him who was driving and giving commands just now. He was the leader of these people. Jason was the second. And the one who dropped the speaker was the fourth, James. These two were twins, but they didn't look alike at all. Jason was relatively more cheerful, while James was taciturn. The zombies today seemed to have mutated again. Jason pulled out a writing board, on which the situation after the zombie outbreak was clearly marked. On July 10th, a series of people in the city suddenly fell into a coma and died during the process of being sent to the hospital for treatment. On July 14th, the corpses that hadn't been cremated in time suddenly came back to life and were aggressive. Characteristics: they bite people, move slowly, have no vision, and weak hearing and sense of smell. On July 15th, those who were bitten by the zombies had symptoms of mutation but didn't die immediately. They even still had some personal consciousness. On July 16th, their mobility increased. They still had no vision, their hearing and sense of smell were the same as ordinary people's, and they had no remaining consciousness. On July 17th, after being bitten, they completely lost their consciousness and would immediately attack living people. On July 20th, they had very strong speed and attack power and would chase living people relying on their sense of smell and hearing, and they're afraid of fire. Jason added 2 more words at the end: they can call for their companions. I hesitated for a moment but still told them about my situation at that time. And from July 17th until today, the streets have been unnaturally quiet. That's because the government carried out a unified destruction of the zombies. James blurted out, "True, but these zombies today aren't the same as the previous ones." "How do you know?" Isaac looked at me. "Because I saw some of them this morning. It was at the bulletproof door factory area. That uncle was a comrade in arms of my father, before I left. He even said that he would ask my father to treat him to a drink in the future, and I, with my own hands, smashed his head with a shovel. The streets have been very quiet these past few days." "Yes, that's why we went out to look for supplies today." James was taken aback for a moment. "Do you mean these zombies were artificially cultivated?" "James," Isaac stopped him. After looking at me, he stood up. "Let's eat first." "Jason, can you lend me your phone?" Jason glanced at Isaac's back and secretly stuffed his phone into my hand. "The password is 9527. I dialed the phone number of my student, Julian. The other end picked up the phone quickly. "It's me, sis." The other party was very excited. "Are you in a position to talk?" "I'm eating, sis. Teacher George found a lot of food for us, and we're all together now. There's something wrong with George and Layla. If anything happens, you can call this number." "Got it, sis. I will definitely listen to the teacher." "How's home?" "I'm fine. Don't tell them I'm still alive. Take care of yourself." "Okay, sis, you take care of yourself too." Julian was a smart kid. This phone was my old phone. I gave it to him after the zombie outbreak so that he could contact me conveniently. When I went out in the morning, he offered to go with me, but I left him at school. He was a repeat student and the oldest child in the classroom. He had strong organizational skills. It happened to be Friday on the day we discovered the intrusion of the abnormal virus. Some students were gradually picked up by their parents. I wasn't at school at that time. It was him who asked the school guard to lock the school gate and then assisted the other teachers in taking the students to the highest floor. I was very relieved to leave him at school. After that, I ran into George in the corridor. He took out a rose folded from colored paper from behind his back and said to me affectionately, "Eleanor, I like you, be my girlfriend." I rejected him. In fact, today was the 5th time I had rejected him. He wasn't angry, though. He just muttered disappointedly, "Failed again. It seems I still need to work harder." "You're going out, right?" "I'll go with you. Your injury is healed." I remembered that he fell and hurt his arm when he went out the day before yesterday. "It's all right now." Considering that the other few teachers had worked the night shift last night, I agreed, and he suggested taking Layla with us, on the grounds of making up for his previous guilt. Now it seemed that George was already acting strangely at that time. In the past, I didn't believe in the awakening of superpowers, but now that zombies had appeared, I couldn't help but wonder if what he said was true. After stuffing some food into my stomach casually, I went to the room Jason mentioned to rest. As soon as I entered the door, I sensed something was wrong. A strong gust of wind blew towards me. Even though I had been trained by my father since I was a child, I still had some difficulty dealing with it. The other person was very powerful. As soon as we fought, he punched me in the chest. Despicable. I was burning with anger in the dark. After grabbing his clothes, I suddenly kneed him upwards. Well, he blocked it with both hands. My body involuntarily fell backward, and the next second, I was held by his long arm. This was the moment. I leaned forward and bumped into him. This time, I succeeded, but I also felt dizzy. He let out a muffled groan and released me. I quickly took the opportunity to leave, but unexpectedly, I tripped over something. So, when the lights in the room turned on, I found myself lying right on top of Isaac. That guy Jason looked at a loss and fled out. Before leaving, he said, "I saw nothing. You two continue. 02, come back." Isaac probably had just taken a shower, his hair was still wet, and he had changed into a set of home clothes. From this angle, his face seemed to be red. Was he blushing? I gave him a glare and quickly got up. Jason backed in, wearing a mischievous smile. "What do you want from me?" Isaac asked. I just came to tell Eleanor that you're in the room." Looking at his ambiguous expression, I suspected that Jason had deliberately not told me that Isaac was in the room. "I'll go out first." "You two talk." I subconsciously pressed my slightly painful chest and looked up to meet Isaac's unnatural gaze. "You stay. I'll go sleep in Jason's room." "No need. I don't like sleeping in a man's bed." It wasn't that I was being finicky. This was a normal reaction. Isaac gave me a strange look and took out a phone from the drawer and handed it to me. "It's for convenient contact." I was a bit surprised. "Do you plan to take me in all the time? We saw today that you were abandoned by others." His words stirred up a storm of emotions in me. I raised my hand and wanted to punch him. Jason was quick to react and grabbed me. There were too many zombies at that time, and we weren't sure if you were an enemy or a friend. The third one was, Jason. Isaac interrupted Jason. "I had a rough idea of what happened. So you were deliberately testing me just now?" I asked. "Yes." I suddenly thought he deserved a punch. I sneered and punched him in the chest. Isaac looked at me in surprise, and a complex emotion flashed in his eyes. After the little episode just now, the feeling of depression in my heart seemed to ease a bit. I walked to the window and looked outside at the pitch-black darkness. If it were a normal day, at this time, the city should be brightly lit. I thought of our old man at home. He called me a few days ago to tell me he was safe, saying that a friend had sent him a lot of food and that he could stay at home for half a year without any problem. He was someone who couldn't stay idle. I was afraid he would run around, so I promised to go on a blind date after this disaster was over. I also remembered that George wasn't actually a teacher at our school. That day, he went to find Layla. They had known each other before and even became sworn siblings. When he confessed to me for the first time, he said that he had admired me for a long time and that he had watched all the martial arts competitions I participated in. Although he seemed gentle and refined, I always felt that he wasn't as mild as he appeared on the surface, because there was ambition in his eyes. Meow, meow. A few meows brought me back to my senses. I was about to go back to my room to rest, but suddenly, the barking of dogs I heard when I went to pick up the bulletproof door and the growling of dogs at the flour mill flashed through my mind. There have been a lot of dog thieves recently. My little black dog is gone. The words of the guy at the flour mill echoed in my ears. "Yesterday," Julian said, "the stray cats that the school took in have all disappeared these days. They probably went to look for food." George said, "Teacher Eleanor, if we run out of food one day, would you have the heart to kill animals to satisfy your hunger?" A chill rose in my heart. I hurriedly followed the sound to look for it and finally found one at the corner of the stairs. "This is Isaac's cat. It's very obedient." The one who spoke was the woman who took care of the children during the day. If I remembered correctly, her name should be Violet. "Does he like small animals?" "No, he doesn't. That's why I've been taking care of it." Seeing my confusion, she added, "I heard that the girl he had a crush on liked small animals, so he got one. They were originally going to meet, but unfortunately, the disaster came. That's really a pity." I examined the cat carefully. After confirming that there was nothing abnormal, I turned around and went back to my room. I hope I'm just overthinking. I was awakened by a commotion at 4 a.m. in the hall. Jason was organizing the children to go out, and several people in military uniforms were standing at the door. Violet came to say goodbye to me, saying that she was going to send the children to a safer place. "When the disaster is over, I'll treat you to skewers." "Okay." I hugged her with a smile. Suddenly, she pushed me, and then there was a piercing meow. The cat was covered in blood. It bit Violet's arm, and the next second, it turned around and bared its teeth at me. There was Violet's flesh and blood on its teeth. I was so angry that I punched it in the head. After the cat was knocked to the ground, it twitched a few times, then turned its head and got ready to pounce on me again. It has mutated. Eleanor, don't move. Something flew past my ear and firmly pierced the cat's abdomen, but it wasn't dead yet and frantically lunged at me. The soldier beside me had no choice but to shoot. The cat fell to the ground after being shot in the head. I quickly went to check Violet's injury. She covered her wound with a look of despair. Eleanor, if I turn into a zombie, you must kill me. I know the others can't do it. That won't happen. Blood kept gushing from her wound. Her pupils slowly dilated, and her eyes turned grayish-white at an extremely fast speed. The children were already crying from fear. Jason looked at me anxiously and decided to let the children leave first. Several ferocious dogs have appeared outside. Prepare for battle. Isaac ran downstairs. It was he who had shot the cat with a tranquilizer gun just now. Violet. Hold on. In response, there was a growl from Violet. After being bitten, she was extremely strong. She directly grabbed my shoulders and tried to bite me. I desperately broke free and picked up a nearby chair and smashed it at her. Although I'm not related to Violet, I really can't bring myself to kill her, but my instincts compelled me to fight back, and I couldn't bear to look at her. Since the zombie outbreak, I've been filled with hatred all the time. I hate where this virus came from. I hate that I don't have the ability to protect the people around me. I saw the machete that Jason gave me yesterday. While I was struggling internally, I had already swung it at Violet's neck. The battle lasted almost an hour. The children were evacuated safely, and although the others were exhausted, fortunately, no one was injured. Where's Violet? Gone. Why didn't I see her at the main gate? Jason asked me weakly. I glanced at him and turned to go upstairs. The fire in the backyard was still burning. I saw Isaac and the others walking over. James knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times, then looked up in my direction. There was accusation in his eyes. I couldn't face them. I put down the phone Isaac gave me and prepared to leave. Violet is James and Jason's cousin and also the fiancé of the third one. Before he died, the third one asked me to take good care of her. Isaac's voice was desolate. At first, we also wanted to do our best to save those strangers, but they pushed the third one out. We made an agreement that we wouldn't save people easily anymore, except for children, but when we saw you being abandoned that day, we still rushed over without hesitation. What are you trying to say? I turned back to look at him. Actually, most of our decisions are just based on instinct, so you don't have to blame yourself. Even if you hadn't done it, one of the 3 of us would have had to. Perhaps we should even thank you. Stay. Isaac stuffed the phone back into my hand. I wanted to say something to him, but my throat felt as if it was blocked by a stone. Finally, I made peace with myself, went downstairs, and started cleaning the blood on the ground. Otherwise, zombies might be attracted by the smell. Eleanor, it's your call. Jason suddenly came over. I thought it should be Julian. Teacher Eleanor. A stray cat got into the school, and several classmates were bitten. George is acting very strangely. I saw him injecting himself with something, and then he defeated several zombies on his own. Me and the classmates ran to the top floor and locked the door. Teacher Eleanor, don't come back. There was a lot of noise on the other end, and Julian was out of breath throughout. Julian, Isaac asked. Are you Julian, brother? Take care of yourself. We're coming to save you right away. Don't come, brother. The school gate has been opened, and we can't escape. The call suddenly cut off. I was extremely anxious, and Isaac looked grave. We have to go back. We must go back. 03, Eleanor, hide behind me later. On the way, Isaac said to me very seriously. There were emotions in his deep eyes that I couldn't understand. The school gate was wide open, and we could faintly hear screams from inside. There was a haze of smoke on the top floor. We parked the car in a hidden place and the 4 of us walked in with our backs to each other. The air was filled with the smell of blood. When we reached the corner of the stairs, a person suddenly appeared in front of us. It was a girl from the next class. She bared her teeth at us. Before she could let out a scream, Isaac smashed her head with a stick. My heart trembled, and my nails dug deeply into my palm. There were 7 or 8 zombies wandering in the corridors of the 2nd and 3rd floors, and the rest seemed to be locked in the classrooms. Isaac made a gesture of encirclement to us. 3, 2, 1. Each of us dealt with 2 zombies, and we solved them smoothly. Blood dripped onto the ground from the tip of the machete. I tried my best to turn myself into a machine that forgets they were once my students. The zombies in the classrooms started to growl, and the sound of chaotic footsteps came from upstairs. Not good. Hide quickly. There happened to be an empty classroom, and the 4 of us immediately hid inside. Taking advantage of this break, I continued to text Julian. Still no reply. What about climbing up the outer wall? Jason suggested. James, I'll do it. Isaac, be careful. Don't worry, we've had training, Isaac said specifically to me. I wanted to say that I wasn't worried about James' skills, but I was afraid he would be scared by the zombies in the classroom. As expected, what I feared happened. The head of a zombie poked out of the window on the 4th floor. James was startled, loosened his grip, and fell. Isaac grabbed his hand in the nick of time. This commotion caused the zombies on the 2nd floor to growl, and some stretched out their hands to grab his feet. Jason, seems this method won't work. James, if it doesn't work, let's use fire. I'll distract them. And the 3 of you go up. I didn't want to waste time here. No. Isaac grabbed my wrist and quickly let go when he realized it was inappropriate. I'm familiar with the terrain here, and I have the obligation to protect them. If I'm destined to die, I hope I die a meaningful death. When those parents called and pleaded with me to protect their children, I had already anticipated this day. I don't want to be the only one left alive. I would rather die than live like that, okay? Isaac suddenly hugged me. Eleanor, be careful. I didn't look back at him. I hit the guardrail hard with the machete, and the zombies on the stairs swarmed towards me. I took advantage of the terrain and ran wildly on the campus. Unfortunately, at the dormitory building, I was blocked by the zombies in front of me. I gripped the machete in my hand tightly. Brother, you'll bless me, right? I had a brother who died while protecting others. I seemed to hear his answer. There was a determination in my eyes that I had never had before. To my surprise, George saved me when I was in a desperate situation. The veins on his arms bulged, and his face was contorted. Eleanor, why aren't you dead? Since you're not dead, of course I have to live. He was probably angry because he saved the wrong person, but now, we were in the same boat. If you dare to plot against me again, I'll drag you down with me even if I die. You're still so naive. But you really underestimate my strength. As if showing off, he punched a zombie's head and blew it with his bare hands. Is this the superpower he mentioned? What do you think? Awesome, right? He kept moving his hands. Except for being a bit out of breath, he said. Who else dares to look down on me now? I didn't bother listening to his nonsense. I attacked him while staying on guard. George managed to smash the heads of dozens of zombies in less than 10 minutes. When there was only the last one left, he gave me a sinister smile. Eleanor, can I leave this one for you? Before I could react, he had already grabbed my neck. This speed was far from that of an ordinary person. Before I die, can I ask you a question? You want to ask about my superpower, right? He looked very proud. Yes, how can one awaken it? Beg me then, go to hell. I glanced at the top floor and closed my eyes. Resigned to my fate, when I opened my eyes again, my eyes were clear. George, I beg you, Eleanor, you've finally come to this. Weren't you always so arrogant? You rejected me so many times when I confessed. Weren't you so high and mighty? But now, you're at my mercy. He threw me to the ground like trash and then punched the last zombie to death. I won't kill you. I want you to watch with your own eyes how I rule over all of you. What do you want to do? His eyes were very dangerous, of course. I'm going to release all the zombies in the school and deal with them, otherwise, where else can you take them? Did that mean there were still students alive? Perhaps seeing my confusion, George dragged me up again. His sticky hand stroked my cheek. Eleanor, don't you want to protect them? Be my slave, and I'll fulfill your wish. What? I can make you awaken your superpower too. My heart skipped a beat, but I said gently on the surface, okay. I followed George all the way to the 5th floor. There was a dense crowd of zombies there. George waved his arms like an indefatigable machine and easily dealt with them. It would be a lie to say I wasn't shocked, but I knew that the current George wasn't normal. When the door on the top floor opened, bright sunlight came in. Julian and the others were all there, and so was Isaac. Eleanor, come here. He watched George warily. Who are they? George asked. This is my brother and his friends. Julian was still a child after all. His eyes were red, and there were still tears on his face. The classmates huddled on the ground lit up when they saw me. Teacher Eleanor, you're finally back. A female student rushed over and hugged me. Teacher, I'm so scared. Don't be afraid. I comforted her. From now on, no one needs to be afraid. I'll protect you all, George said loudly. And your teacher Eleanor, she's my girlfriend now. There was a moment of silence. Eleanor, Isaac called me. Yes, I've agreed to be George's girlfriend. I looked at Isaac and said each word clearly, to be his girlfriend. 04. George put his arm around my shoulders and kissed my cheek with his foul-smelling mouth. Isaac took a step forward but was held back by Jason. Jason forced a smile and said to me, Congratulations. George proposed killing all the zombies in the school, but Isaac objected, arguing that the remaining students shouldn't be put at risk. I can handle it alone. George was very confident in his strength. Eleanor, what do you think? I looked at the remaining 69 students in front of me, feeling extremely desolate. I agree, Teacher Eleanor. Julian looked at me disappointedly. Let's use electricity. It's too dangerous for you to go alone. I didn't want George to take the risk alone. If he died, who could I ask about the superpower? Eleanor, are you worried about me? George looked pleasantly surprised. Yes, I stared into his eyes. I want you to stay alive. He looked at me with a half smile and then laughed loudly. Okay, since everyone trusts me, I'll do it without hesitation. We left the weaker students on the top floor and split into several groups to set up the plan. In fact, the so-called plan was to use the weather forecast and the conductivity of water. As it was getting dark, it finally started to rain. Isaac and George took the lead and lured the zombies out of the teaching building. I took out my phone to record. George said he wanted to document his glorious moment. I watched Isaac fighting with the zombies, listened to James swearing, and felt the frightened gazes of the students around me. The moment I pulled the switch, George pushed Isaac into the midst of the zombies, just like he did to me that day. Damn it. Jason was so anxious that he wanted to go down, but I stopped him. Then we saw George pull Isaac back again, and his speed was extremely fast. His push and pull seemed to be teasing the other person. The electrocuted zombies started to twitch, looking very ridiculous, but there were also a few zombies that moved towards George and the others with clear targets. After about 10 minutes, I pulled down the switch, and George and the others began to fight back. With this combat power, is he still human? Jason exclaimed. George is so amazing. It seems that superpowers can really be awakened. The students who were crying just now had now boldly moved to the railing. They seemed to have seen hope. Compared with George, Isaac was much less impressive, but as an ordinary person, he was already very good. Julian, have you seen Teacher Layla? Teacher Layla said she went back to the dormitory to get something in the morning. Teacher Eleanor, why did you agree to be George's girlfriend? Julian was a stubborn child. What do you think? I have to admit that I'm a vulgar person. I'm just a bit disappointed. I smiled and patted his shoulder, then turned and went downstairs. Layla's dormitory was on the 3rd floor, and mine was on the 4th floor. We used to have some friendship. We would go shopping and have meals together in our free time. Although she was a bit melodramatic, she was a decent person. Sure enough, disasters really bring out the true nature of people. I stopped in front of Layla's dormitory door. The door was slightly ajar, and it was very quiet inside. I kicked the door open, and a figure rushed out from behind the door, probably intending to attack me. My skills were good enough to deal with an ordinary person. I turned her around and pinned her to the ground. George, save me. It was Layla's voice. I pressed her head hard against the ground and rubbed it until she cried and begged for mercy. Don't kill me. I know how to defeat the zombies. Really, she probably recognized my voice. Eleanor, is that you? Eleanor, weren't you dead? It's too cold down there. I came up specifically to have you keep me company. No, please don't kill me. I'll burn a lot of paper money for you. Okay, your death has nothing to do with me. She was so easily frightened that she had wet her pants. Disgusting. I got up and turned on the lights in the room. You're not a ghost. What do you think? I grinned at her and knocked her out with a punch. There were bottles and jars on the table, along with syringes. My first thought was that Layla had the nerve to engage in illegal activities, but looking at her wet pants, I thought it was unlikely. Just as I was about to take them away for study, a sharp pain shot through my neck, and my body involuntarily fell to the ground. Eleanor, why don't you just die? She kicked me several times and then started rustling around to change her clothes. If it weren't for the fact that this injection affects fertility, Layla, could also become a savior. That bastard George thinks he's so amazing, but he still has to please others, and he talks about superpowers. Haha, the apocalypse is all fake, and superpowers are nothing. The apocalypse is fake. I rubbed my neck and asked, of course, if no one deliberately released the virus, where would this apocalypse come from? Is that so? I grabbed Layla by the neck, although I had suspected it before. I still didn't want to believe it. Cough, don't kill me. Well, it depends on how sincere you are. 05. When we got back to the teaching building, all the zombies had been eliminated. Isaac was kneeling on the ground gasping for breath, while George shouted confidently towards the top floor, "Don't be afraid, classmates, all the zombies have died, you are safe." Looking at his confident appearance, I really wished I had a gun in my hand to blow his brains out. Safe, trapped in this small place. Can we really survive the disaster? The answer was no. George? I picked up the coat he had dropped on the ground. Are you hurt? How could I get hurt? Where did you go just now? Where's Layla? I asked him. His face darkened, and he grabbed my hand with his blood-stained one. Why are you looking for her? I didn't hide my disgust. She locked me out. Of course I want to get even. George laughed. This is the Eleanor I know. Don't worry. I'll take you to see her later. I hope you don't forget our agreement. I didn't fully trust him. Are you two done? Can you hurry up and clean up the bodies? Everyone from the top floor had come down. James looked at George and me with a bad expression. I was on the front line. Now it's your turn. With that, he pulled me towards the office on the 1st floor. After closing the door, George washed his face first and then leaned back in the chair, looking a bit tired. Eleanor, come and give me a shoulder rub, will you? George, when are you going to fulfill what you promised me? He closed his eyes and leaned comfortably against me, his wandering hand covering mine. Don't be in a hurry, let me rest for one night first. I suppressed my anger and was about to go out and help the others, but George grabbed me, and I fell onto his lap. Eleanor, if you want to gain power, shouldn't you show me your sincerity? A chill slowly crept up from my abdomen. I closed my eyes, resigned to my fate. 06. What are you doing? The door was kicked open from the outside, and Isaac appeared at the door, looking furious. What a buzzkill. George slapped my thigh, flexed his wrists, and looked ready for a fight. Taking advantage of him turning around, I stabbed the syringe filled with anesthetic into his neck. He turned around and punched me as soon as he felt the pain. It hurt badly. Then he kicked me away. Isaac, stop him. A stream of warm blood flowed down my forehead, carrying a faint smell of blood. Isaac didn't hesitate and started fighting with George. Seeing that George was only a bit slower, I knew the dose wasn't enough. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I joined the fight and gave him another injection of anesthetic. Jason and James rushed over when they heard the commotion, after exchanging a glance. They helped tie George up. You two go out and don't let anyone else come near here. We'll interrogate him later. Isaac and I looked at each other, and he spoke first. You only agreed to be his girlfriend out of necessity, right? Yes, he knows the truth about the zombie virus outbreak. What? Isaac was shocked. He had thought I was just trying to deal with George and had to compromise because of his abilities. I stuffed George's mouth with a smelly sock. Even though he had been injected with anesthetic, he was still conscious. Not wanting to waste time, I pressed my machete against his neck. Tell me what this so-called awakening of superpowers is all about. Fear showed in his cloudy eyes, and he nodded repeatedly. I took out the sock from his mouth and turned on the voice recording on my phone. I actually came back from the future. I was born with superpowers. There's a price to pay for spouting nonsense. I stepped on his groin, and Isaac beside me flinched and sat up straight, pressing his legs together. It hurt so much. George took about 3 minutes to recover, with cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. I'll tell you everything. Should have done this earlier. George's story was short, but I was filled with anger after hearing it. He had borrowed money from loan sharks because of gambling, and the person who lent him the money told him there was a way to avoid repayment by doing certain things at a specific time. For example, on July 10th, he went to a crowded place and spread the virus. On that day, George came to our school and treated some students to drinks. Before that, he had appeared as my suitor, and the students, who still believed in love, were easily touched by his actions. They were a large organization, spread out all over the country after the initial virus outbreak. They would upgrade it according to the infection situation and then release it again. That's why the zombies kept evolving. The government took swift action, so on July 20th, they chose to use animals to speed up the spread. Did they want humanity to be destroyed? Apparently not. Otherwise, why would they develop drugs that could mutate human bodies? Give me the list of those people. I'm just a small fry. How would I know that? I didn't believe him, so I stepped on the same spot again. I felt a sense of satisfaction listening to his cries. What do human lives mean to you? George grinned, his eyes glowing with a strange light. Eleanor, don't you think the world needs a reset? We work from dawn till dusk, and our bosses can decide our fates with just a single word. We work our butts off to earn money, only to spend decades of our lives paying off a house. Why should others decide our lives? Why should they have control over our fates? You're just stupid. I really wanted to crack open his skull and see if it was filled with nothing but nonsense. You have no ability but still have wild dreams. You just want something for nothing, and that's why your life is meaningless. So I want to become the strongest. I want to rule over them. I want you all to submit to me. Aren't you the same? You offered yourself to me just to get superpowers. I didn't want to listen to his nonsense, so I stuffed the smelly sock back into his mouth. Superpowers? Are you out of your mind? Look at the mess you've become. I took out a small mirror from my pocket and made him take a good look at his hideous face. Haven't you ever thought about the side effects of this drug? You probably won't live long enough to see the day you're looking forward to. It doesn't matter if you don't talk. Tomorrow morning, someone will take you away for research. Every inch of your skin will be cut open, and every drop of your blood will be drawn out. You brought this upon yourself. George whimpered for a long time, but I ignored him. Isaac was clearly shocked by the news and asked me if I had noticed something was wrong earlier. I just told him that I believed in science. Science made me disbelieve in superpowers, but since they existed, it meant someone had deliberately created them, push humanity to the brink and then appear as saviors. The original authorities would be questioned, and those with ulterior motives would take the opportunity to rise to power. Just like the disaster 30 years ago, George kept shaking and even foamed at the mouth. He couldn't die, or he would lose his value. When he spoke again, he was still annoying. No, Eleanor, don't send me for research, it's useless. The zombie virus has already broken out, and the world is about to end. Keep me here, okay? I can help you kill zombies. I can protect you. With what? I patted his cheek. With the injections that you had Layla hide in the dormitory. How do you know? What did you do with my stuff? If he had even asked about Layla, I would have thought he was still a man. What do you think? George probably guessed that I had taken his things. He turned to Isaac and said, "Dude, don't you want to be stronger? Don't you want to stop being bullied? Kill this woman. The stuff she has can make you a hero." Isaac showed some interest, stood up, and walked over to me. "Is it really with you?" My heart sank, and I replied expressionlessly, "So what if it is? Are you really going to kill me?" The man pursed his lips, and his face darkened. "My life is yours now. Are you crazy? I told you to kill her," George shouted, and in response, Isaac punched him hard. He passed out, and the office finally fell silent. "Don't tell anyone about this. Protect yourselves. Don't you want it?" I asked him. His face turned red, and he glanced around. "It's too soon. And this isn't the right place." So he really wanted to be stronger. I gave him a look of disdain. "Aren't you afraid of ending up like George? Did he touch you?" "What?" His eyes were terrifying. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his arms. "Isaac, what are you? Let's kill him." "Okay. I won't tell anyone. I'll protect you from now on." I felt like we had misunderstood each other. "Calm down. Nothing happened between him and me. I just lured him in and then attacked." Isaac stiffened for a moment and then asked me seriously, "Then what you said earlier about wanting, well, I have no interest in those injections." Good, it was all cleared up, but I felt a strange heat spreading through my body, and my face was burning. We locked George in the room and had dinner with the remaining students as if nothing had happened. During the meal, a classmate asked about George. I just told them he was too tired and needed to rest. Isaac and I were waiting for George to be taken away the next day, but unexpectedly, a figure entered the office in the dead of night. 07, Teacher Eleanor, something's wrong, George has escaped. Just as dawn broke, Julian brought the bad news. I immediately checked my backpack and found that all the injections I had taken from Layla the day before were gone, the girl who had rushed into my arms for safety the previous night. Audrey was also missing. She even left me a note. "Sorry, Teacher Eleanor, I choose to follow the strong." Thinking of the rice porridge she had brought me before going to bed, my heart sank to the bottom. How ironic. The people I risked my life to protect had finally betrayed me. I locked myself in the room and didn't open the door no matter how much Isaac and the others called. Isaac came again at dinner. They're in the building across the way. "If you want all your students to fall into the clutches of a wolf, then keep wallowing in self-pity." George was being extremely arrogant. To win over more students, he openly challenged me. When I got to the campus, some students were already standing behind him. "Your teacher Eleanor only wants to become strong herself and doesn't care about your lives at all. She just wants you to follow her blindly so that you can become food for the zombies when the horde comes." As he spoke, he played a recording. "How can I awaken my powers, George? I'm begging you." Immediately, the children who had been standing by my side all gave me strange looks. Their eyes seemed to say, "So this is the kind of person you are." Disappointment and disdain were like a rope tightening around my neck, and no matter how much I struggled, I couldn't break free. "It's different with me. I can make all of you strong and free from fear. I promise that as long as you follow me. You'll see your parents soon." As soon as he said this, an arrow whistled through the air and directly pierced into the display board next to George. "I trust Eleanor." Isaac had somehow appeared by my side, followed by the Jason and James. "Me too. She led us here to save you. Don't be deceived by George, everyone. Don't you remember how Teacher Eleanor has treated us?" Julian came out to defend me. "We haven't forgotten, but we just want to survive." "What's wrong with that?" Audrey looked at me with red eyes. "Teacher Eleanor, I really want to go home." She had always been a timid child and rarely spoke even during PE class. Unexpectedly, her words hit everyone where it hurt. George gave me a provocative look. "Next, I'll show you how to awaken your superpowers." As soon as he finished speaking, George dragged someone up from behind him. It was Layla. Her mouth was taped shut with transparent tape, and her hands were tied behind her back. George took out a syringe and injected it into Layla's arm. In just a few minutes, Layla, who had been weak and powerless, immediately stood up from the ground. Yes, stood up, because she had been lying face down before. Her hands, which had been tied behind her back, also broke free from the restraints in an instant. "George, go to hell." Layla kicked George, and the two quickly got into a fight. "See, this is power. This is superpower. I, George, am the real hero who will save you all." The two fought fiercely, and in the end, George emerged victorious. You clearly know that this drug has side effects. If they take it, they may not live long enough to see their parents, but it's better than waiting to die here, isn't it? There was madness in George's eyes. He wants everyone to die with him. Isaac comforted me, pressing my shoulders. I'll always be with you, Eleanor. You can't stop us. Look at this. He pointed at the phones in the hands of several male students and said, "We've been live streaming the whole time." My heart jolted. I quickly took out my phone and checked, only to find that the live stream was on almost all platforms, and it wasn't just George. All his accomplices had transformed into so-called saviors, using the internet to mislead the public. "Eleanor, join us. Let's redefine the order of this world." The seductive voice echoed through the campus. I watched helplessly as more and more people walked towards him. It seemed like an eternity passed before I heard myself say, "Okay, 08, Eleanor, don't go." Isaac held my hand, and the worry in his eyes was almost overwhelming. "Isaac, it's my duty to protect them, and I can only keep my promise by becoming stronger." Pushing Isaac away, I walked towards George. With every step I took, I could hear Isaac's angry shouts, "Eleanor, you've really disappointed me. Have you forgotten what you're loyal to? I thought you were like him." "Shut up." I turned back and glared at Isaac, finally revealing the pain hidden deep in my heart. "You have no right to mention him. Don't forget, he died saving you. Isaac, I've wanted to kill you since the first moment I saw you. I once had a brother who loved me. He was a soldier. He sacrificed his life to save a playful boy, and that boy was the young Isaac. So, I recognized him the moment Isaac saved me. Isaac, where even now?" It started to rain heavily, through the curtain of rain. I couldn't see the expression on Isaac's face clearly, but I knew he must have regretted saving me at that moment. The live stream continued, and the comments were polarized. Some people cursed me, while others said such a choice wasn't shameful in the face of the apocalypse. If it were me, I'd be willing to sacrifice myself as long as I could protect my family. Agreed. "Eleanor, welcome to join us." George held out his hand to me, but pulled it back as I got closer. "You have to show some sincerity." He handed me the syringe. "Eleanor, once you inject it, there's no turning back." Isaac was still shouting. Without hesitation, I inserted the needle into my arm. A feeling of suffocation washed over me, and I staggered to my knees. I never intended to turn back. I gritted my teeth and retorted at Isaac, then began gasping for air. George seemed very satisfied with my performance. He took the wine from Audrey's hand and started drinking heartily. "Come on. Let's welcome your teacher Eleanor together." Audrey came up to me and said, "Teacher Eleanor, our decision was right, but I still won't forgive you." She looked at me in surprise, then smiled and took a few steps back. "Eleanor, I thought you had more backbone." In response to Layla's mockery, I simply said, "Once you've been a lackey for too long, you forget how you used to walk on your own. How dare you abuse me?" Layla was enraged and raised her hand to hit me, but George slapped her instead. "Go and get ready, Eleanor. Don't be angry. Let's go have dinner first, and then we'll help the children awaken their superpowers." He turned his back to me and started walking towards the cafeteria. When we sat down, George suddenly said, "You know, Eleanor, I almost thought you were lying to me again. Do you think I have any other choice?" He smiled triumphantly, and I was so annoyed that I ate 2 extra bowls of rice. The crucial moment arrived soon, and this live stream was even more widely spread. I could feel that George was extremely excited. He injected himself with 2 more syringes in a row. "Now, it's time to witness a miracle," he boasted to the children in line, and that's when I stabbed a super concentrated anesthetic into his neck. George turned to look at me in disbelief. "Eleanor, you lied to me again." "Yes, I did, and now it's your end. I'll kill you." George erupted in anger and turned to attack me. "No, I'll kill you." This time, I had no more scruples. Every punch landed solidly, and every move was a deadly one. I had been waiting for this moment for too long. "I knew you bitch wanted to be the savior yourself. Classmates, come and help me. If I die, no one will take you home." But no one dared to move, because they heard Isaac say, "Look at George now. Doesn't he look like a monster? If you take those drugs, will your parents even recognize you when you get home?" These are the people who created the zombie virus. They're the ones responsible for this disaster, and their goal is to make us complete slaves, to live our entire lives in suffering and separation. Is that really the life you want? Then Isaac played the videos recorded by the parents of the surviving students. Every cry in those videos was a glimmer of hope for the students to turn back. "Don't listen to their nonsense. Eleanor injected the drug herself, and she's still fine. That's because Teacher Eleanor didn't actually take the drug." Audrey stepped forward. "It was all just a plan between me, Teacher Eleanor, and the others. Only Layla's injection was real." I gave Audrey a thumbs up, while George was stunned. I punched him again. "George, Haven't you noticed that you don't have much strength left, because I've already destroyed all those drugs? His expression cracked little by little, then turned into boundless anger as he charged at me. I took the opportunity to pull out the fruit knife hidden in my clothes and slashed at his neck. I missed my target and only wounded his chest. George's face contorted with rage, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Eleanor, you forgot we have many more people. You may be able to kill me, but you can't kill them all. My brothers and sisters will continue the plan to destroy the world. Really? Then take a look at the live stream. From the moment we started suspecting George, we had made comprehensive plans. We asked Audrey to get close to George and encouraged them to live stream their so-called salvation, and revealed the unknown secrets between Isaac and me to intensify the conflict. Then we contacted the government troops and used the live stream to locate and capture them all at once. Even if some managed to escape, we could still deal a blow to their forces and let the public know their true nature. Fortunately, we succeeded. Upon learning the truth, George's face turned ashen, and he completely lost his will to fight. He started babbling nonsense and scratching at his body. It itches so much. Eleanor, save me. Then, in front of everyone, black blood oozed from his body, and he turned into a decaying corpse. Audrey ran over and hugged me excitedly. Teacher Eleanor, I was wrong. I shouldn't have disobeyed you. Originally, our plan was to send Julian to infiltrate George's group, but Audrey found out, she said. Compared to a strong boy, a vulnerable girl who misses home is more likely to be trusted, isn't she? I was worried about her safety and didn't agree, but she went ahead on her own. The sentence she deliberately said to me earlier was a signal that the positioning was successful. Our decision was right. I hate these bastards who spread the virus. How could I ever collaborate with them? Whether it's a virus or a war, it's always the most vulnerable people at the bottom who suffer the most. Jason and his brother were calming down the students, while Isaac walked straight up to me and hugged me. He knew who I was from the moment he saved me. We tacitly pretended not to recognize each other and tried to forget those dark days. My dearest brother, his most respected senior, died saving him, and I couldn't face him anymore. Although we were only close as children, I often heard his name from my brother in the following years. My brother always said that Isaac was a great prospect for the military and that he would take me to have a meal with him someday. Unfortunately, what I got instead was, Eleanor, let's get a cat. I remember you used to like them. Okay, watch out. I had forgotten about Layla, the menace. When I saw her stab at Isaac with a knife, I instinctively pushed him away. The moment the knife pierced my skin, I seemed to understand something. Isaac held me in his arms, at a loss. He desperately tried to cover my wound, but blood gushed out through his fingers. Isaac, don't blame yourself. I just did it out of instinct. Because I cared about him. When danger came, I didn't think twice. All I wanted in that moment was for him to be safe. My brother must have felt the same way back then. 09. Audrey's perspective. At that moment, I suddenly began to doubt myself. Did I really have the ability to protect them? Although the source of the virus had been effectively controlled, zombies were still rampant in various places and began to spontaneously form rescue teams. Isaac, as the organizer of the local team, had been away for a week, looking at teacher Eleanor, who was still unconscious in the hospital bed. I told myself to be strong. Everyone was terrified when teacher Eleanor suddenly collapsed. Fortunately, the live stream was still on, and several doctors risked their lives to rush to the school. Along with them came wave after wave of zombies. In that critical moment, we junior high school students picked up weapons and swore to protect the people we cared about. Just as teacher Eleanor once said, I didn't teach you martial arts just to keep you fit. It's more about cultivating your fighting spirit. Only by becoming strong through your own abilities can you protect the ones you love. After seeing teacher Eleanor defeat George with her own strength, everyone finally understood that anything obtained at the cost of harming oneself would eventually backfire. Teacher Eleanor, wake up quickly. I heard that Isaac has been confessed to by several girls. If you don't wake up soon, he might be snatched away. Just as I was about to go get some water to wipe teacher Eleanor's face, a weak voice came from behind me. Are you so gossipy at such a young age? Do you want me to reward you with some test papers? I turned around in disbelief and saw that teacher Eleanor had really opened her eyes. After that, my classmates and I secretly saw Isaac, who had rushed back overnight, crying his eyes out while holding teacher Eleanor in his arms. So unmanly. And then, when we were caught peeking, each of us was rewarded with a set of test papers. 10. On the 83rd day of the zombie virus outbreak, Isaac led the team out again. Actually, my physical strength has almost fully recovered, but they still don't feel at ease with me going along. Layla's ending was something I didn't expect. She actually committed suicide after stabbing me. The reason was that she thought she had lost her fertility after taking the drug and had no future. I suddenly thought she was ridiculous. She was always chasing after things that were out of reach and forgot to love herself. Looking at the rising sun in the distance, I know that although the road ahead is long as we stand together, our wishes will eventually come true. Story 2. Before the zombie apocalypse, I built 2 safe houses. One was in the residential community. I allowed everyone to come in because this safe house was deliberately used by me to attract both people and zombies. Only the safe house in the remote corner was my real shelter. 01. I was a reborn person. In my previous life, I was bitten by a zombie. The people my mother had kindly saved tied me up and threw me into a horde of zombies with their own hands. My kind mother and father were also killed by them, and in the end, they occupied our shelter, on the first day after being reborn, in front of my neighbors. I frantically bought all kinds of canned food and barrels of drinking water. In addition, I called the decorators and sealed off the top floor to store supplies. My neighbor, Phoenix, had a name that implied kindness, but his character was completely the opposite. In the previous life, because we had been neighbors for many years, when the city was surrounded by zombies, my parents shared our family supplies with Phoenix's family. We even let the members of his family into our house to tide over the difficulties together. However, later, Phoenix seized our shelter and supplies. Not only that, but he also demanded that my family go out to find new supplies. After he sneak attacked and tied me up, he threatened my parents that if they didn't go out to find supplies, he would kill me. In the end, my parents had to take the risk and go out. As the saying goes, help others to the end and send the Buddha to the West. Since you helped me before, you might as well help me some more. After my parents went out time and time again, they finally encountered zombies. I could even hear their screams downstairs from my room. I watched helplessly as they were bitten and turned into walking corpses, and I became their last insurance for breaking through the encirclement. When the zombies surrounded us, I was thrown into the horde of zombies by them to attract the zombies' attention. 02. Bella, what are you busy with? Why are you buying so many things? Let me tell you, these things are not good for your health if you eat them. Seeing me frantically buying things again, Phoenix began to lecture me in the manner of an experienced person. Yes, uncle, you're right, but I'm storing these things for a purpose. There might be a disaster in a few days, so I'm preparing more supplies. I replied with a forced smile, and at the same time, I didn't slow down my actions on the phone. Seeing my attitude, Phoenix sighed to others that young people these days don't work hard but just know how to shop online all day long. Seeing Phoenix pretending again in front of others, I couldn't help but sneer in my heart. Just keep pretending. In a few days, you won't have the chance to pretend anymore. I calculated that there were less than 3 days left before the zombies appeared. I had to quickly stock up on more supplies. Moreover, I not only wanted to store supplies, but I also wanted to do it ostentatiously. I wished everyone knew that my house had a large amount of food. I even stored a lot of supplies on the top floor. As for my parents, right after I was reborn, I immediately asked them to go back to our hometown. My hometown was in the mountains, with the rugged terrain full of gullies. You could dig a hole anywhere and it would be a cave dwelling. The cave dwelling was warm in winter and cool in summer, with a cellar attached. It was simply a shelter bestowed by heaven. My grandparents' generation had lived in cave dwellings. For a reborn person like me, it was really a combination of favorable timing, geographical location, and human harmony. After I arranged for my parents to go back, I repeatedly told them to check the cellar and bought truckloads of potatoes to transport to our hometown. Potatoes can be stored in the cellar for a long time without going bad. They are also not easy to be discovered when planted in the fields. The food made from them is diverse and won't make people feel bored. At the same time, they are high in calories and filling. I wasn't worried about my parents in our hometown. Now it was time for me to have some fun dealing with that beast Phoenix. The tragic scenes of my previous life were still vivid in my mind. Since I was reborn, if I didn't get my revenge properly, I would be sorry for my character. While buying supplies on a large scale, I also installed several surveillance cameras nearby that could be used for remote communication. On the one hand, it was for my escape at that time. On the other hand, if I couldn't communicate remotely, how could I quietly attract the zombies here? 03. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed, after I personally prepared the shelter here, which could also be called Phoenix's execution ground. At night, taking advantage of no one's notice, I drove to my parents' place. After winding through the mountain roads, I stopped the car. After winding around again, I finally arrived at the cave dwelling in our hometown. At my strong suggestion, an additional mound of earth was built outside the cave dwelling. From a distance, it was impossible to tell that there was a cave dwelling here. After passing through the outer mound of earth, there were explosion-proof doors and explosion-proof glass at the bank level, as well as electrified grids. The walls inside the room were all reinforced. Of course, this was just a superficial disguise. The real shelter was underground, in a basement that no one would ever think of. The basement was connected to the cellar, centered around the cellar and the basement. There were also 2 abandoned tunnels. If the situation changed, it would be convenient to hide. I had prepared a large amount of potatoes, fresh water, and other supplies in the tunnels, the cellar, and the basement. In this way, even if one of these places failed, I could still go to other places. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. If I couldn't figure this out after being reborn, I really deserved to die in my previous life. After finishing all these preparations, I secretly returned to the residential community before dawn. Although I was very tired and highly nervous, I felt extremely satisfied. What could be more satisfying than being able to avenge my enemies with my own hands soon, tomorrow? What should come will come. 04. I slept until dawn and casually turned on my phone, only to see a series of news. The experts said that there were cases of people biting others and the virus spreading among people in the urban area and other places. Although the experts repeatedly stated that this was just an isolated case and could be quickly controlled, the public spontaneously rushed to the supermarkets to frantically grab supplies. Looking at the news, I couldn't help but curl the corners of my mouth into a smile. A bunch of fools, going to the supermarket at this time. What if someone in there was already infected? In such a crowded place, who could escape? A day later, as I expected, the zombies broke out on a large scale. The first batch of people were those who still rushed out after the virus broke out. At this moment, they were like walking corpses, attacking all the living things within their sight. I was even standing by the window and saw a couple running in a panic. As a result, the girl was normal 1 second, and the next second, her body twitched. Then she pounced on the boy beside her, who was so scared that his legs went weak. After another twitch, there was one more zombie in the community. Just as I was still observing by the window, I heard a dong 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 knock on the door. I opened the door and saw that it was my enemy Phoenix standing at the door, looking behind him. Good grief. There was a large crowd of people, looking at Phoenix's innocent-looking appearance. I couldn't help but feel a little confused. Why was this different from my memory in the previous life? Had the script been changed? Hey, Bella, a few days ago, I heard you say there would be a disaster, so I thought it's better to believe it than not. I called my relatives together, but I didn't have any extra food stocked up. Look at your place. As he spoke, his eyes kept looking into my house. When he saw the canned food and bread piled up in the living room, their eyes immediately lit up. Instantly, all sorts of scoundrels emerged. Wow, it's still Bella who's amazing. She prepared so many things in advance. Yeah, now we don't have to worry. It's still Phoenix who's amazing. He knew there was such a good shelter here. That's right, we're saved. As they were talking, they were about to walk in. Seeing this, I couldn't help but sneer. Indeed. Birds of a feather flock together. Well, Bella, look, we're all neighbors. This, Phoenix stammered. I didn't even need to think to know what he wanted to do. Didn't he just want to stuff all his relatives and friends into my place? But it didn't matter. The house behind me wasn't the safe shelter they thought it was. It was a cage, a prison that I prepared for them. 05. I was exactly hoping that Phoenix would bring all his relatives here. There was nothing more satisfying than avenging my enemies with my own hands. If I could wipe out all my enemies' relatives at once, it would be a double blessing. God really treated a reborn person like me well. With this thought in mind, I quickly welcomed them into the house, opened all the room doors, and allowed them to choose freely. Come on in, everyone. Since you're Phoenix's relatives, you're my relatives too. Don't be shy after you come in. Just make yourselves at home. After hearing my words, Phoenix's family, who had been eager to move, became even more unscrupulous in my house. They looked around and picked and chose, and the house was suddenly in a mess. Seeing that everyone had found their own places to stay, the corners of Phoenix's mouth almost reached his neck. He secretly glanced at me. When he found that I didn't seem to care, he began to lecture me in the tone of an elder again. Bella, don't think I'm being long-winded. Since you already knew the zombies were coming, you should have prepared a bigger house. In the end, you should have gotten an entire building so that everyone could have their own rooms. It wouldn't be as messy as it is now, with people sleeping on the beds and sofas, and some even having to sleep on the floor. Hearing his words, I couldn't hide my joy. Phoenix is right. Next time for sure. Phoenix, if you're lacking anything, you must tell me. Just take it from me. That's so embarrassing. Although he said that, when Phoenix left, he still took a bag of canned food. Looking at him going out and closing the door, my eyes became cold. It didn't matter. After tomorrow, you'll be able to feel what true despair is. 06. At night, taking advantage of everyone's inattention, I quietly went out alone. I watched the surveillance video of the community on my phone. After confirming the safe route, I opened the unit door and slipped out. I found the SUV I left in the community and drove out directly without even turning on the headlights. The SUV had also been modified by me. A protective railing was installed around the wheels so that even if it hit a zombie, the zombie's arms or legs wouldn't get stuck in the tires and cause the car to stall. After leaving the community, I first drove in one direction and got on the highway. Of course, I directly crashed through the highway barrier. After getting on the highway, I drove slowly towards my hometown. At the same time, the backhand I left during the decoration that could be remotely controlled by my phone was finally put to use. With a gentle click on my phone, the building in my community suddenly became resplendent. The electronic lights installed on the outer wall flashed, looking so beautiful. In the dark night, the zombies had poor eyesight and it was difficult for them to see clearly. So I chose to run away on the first night because the longer I delayed, the more zombies there would be. I might not be able to leave later, so as soon as the electronic lights were turned on, it was like a ship sailing in the dark night, seeing a lighthouse. Countless zombies, limping but with firm steps, moved towards the community. By the time I drove into the mountains, it was almost dawn. There was no way. I was worried that someone would follow me after seeing the headlights. So I drove cautiously all the way. After the car drove into the mountain depression, I got out of the car and walked forward on foot. The car would leave tire marks on the mountain road, so as soon as I drove in, I gave up the idea of continuing to drive forward. I didn't stop until I got home and got into the basement. My parents finally let out a sigh of relief. "You child, since you knew it was dangerous outside, why did you still go out?" "Mom, don't say anything. You're grown up now and we can't control you anymore. Anyway, remember that when you encounter danger, you should run as far away as possible." After saying that, my mother went to the cooking area to prepare food for me. It warmed my heart to see that. My father didn't say anything either, but the worry in his eyes couldn't be hidden. After having a good meal, I turned on the phone surveillance and saw that my house was really bustling now. In the early morning, everyone looked around and only then found that I was gone. What was even worse was that the downstairs was surrounded by zombies in 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. I adjusted the surveillance installed outside to look at the community and found that the roads in the community were basically occupied by zombies at this time. Seeing this, I sighed. Although I knew that what I did was harming others, this thought was quickly thrown out of my mind. When an avalanche occurs, no snowflake is innocent. When I was abandoned in my previous life, no one spoke up for me. This time, it was just a role reversal. The hunter became me, and the prey became them. 07. My house was really lively at this time. Everyone was initially very frightened by my disappearance. When they found that the entire building was surrounded by zombies and some zombies were already trying to break into the unit door, they were in a complete panic. When Phoenix entered my room, his previously complacent expression disappeared and was replaced by a gloomy look, and now that things had turned out like this, it also showed that the spread of the zombies was much faster than everyone had imagined. Now when I turned on my phone again, the top news was all about the zombie scene. There was blood everywhere on the streets, and the roars of the zombies and the cries of the survivors filled my ears, making me feel extremely uneasy. There were even some fearless live streamers who brought their live streaming equipment, hoping to make a fortune. Unexpectedly, they were pounced on by zombies that suddenly emerged from nowhere and turned into zombies in less than a minute. There was no doubt that not only did I know the news, but Phoenix and the others also knew it. Perhaps because Phoenix and the others were making too much noise, the zombies downstairs in the community noticed that there were people upstairs and became even more violent, piling up layer by layer and rushing upwards. However, fortunately, there weren't too many zombies, and they all lived on the upper floors. The zombies couldn't rush up in a short time. Seeing this, everyone seemed to heave a sigh of relief. Although it was very dangerous outside, for now, they were still safe. Everyone. "There are zombies everywhere outside now. We mustn't go out. As long as we don't go out, we'll be safe for the time being. Just wait patiently for rescue." Phoenix suddenly seemed to be the backbone of everyone and began to give instructions. Under his arrangement, Phoenix's family also no longer seemed confused and began to unpack my supplies box by box and feast on them. Looking at their everyone wished they could have a meal with 8 dishes and 1 soup. I shook my head. They still didn't know how to save resources at this time. They really were courting death before the King of Hell called. At night, after dinner, my parents went to rest. I quietly slipped out, put on the binoculars and night vision goggles, and patrolled around. Although this place was remote and there wasn't anyone around now, what if? I clenched the knife I bought and continued to walk around. When I turned on my phone, I found that everyone was forwarding a post on the social media, saying something about scanning the code to register the address, indicating the current food inventory, and that drones would be sent to deliver supplies regularly later. For a moment, a large number of survivors forwarded it one after another, urging everyone to fill it out quickly. I didn't register. On the one hand, I had a lot of supplies here, and this kind of thing should be left to those who needed it more. On the other hand, I wasn't sure if this was really issued by the government. If it was deliberately released by someone with ulterior motives to fish for people, then it would be interesting. After patrolling around and finding nothing, I went back to sleep. The next day, before I woke up, I smelled the smell of cooking. When I opened my eyes, I found that my parents had already prepared all the meals for the day. While eating, I turned on my phone and found that the news still hadn't been updated. This wasn't a good sign. The situation now was so severe that even information couldn't be shared. Hospitals, fire departments, and the police might also be facing paralysis now. My parents also noticed the abnormality of the news on the phone. My father was okay, just sighing. My mother looked a bit strange and asked, "In fact, it's already in chaos outside now. We're almost just waiting to die, right?" I shook my head helplessly. At least we have enough supplies here to last us 2 or 3 years. If the zombie problem hasn't been solved after 2 or 3 years, we definitely won't be able to survive either. We might just be the last group of people. As I was speaking, I opened the surveillance of the community in my room again. Phoenix's family didn't sleep soundly last night. When they woke up in the middle of the night, they finally realized how bright the lights of the entire building were in the dark night, combined with the fact that I had been gone for a long time. Even a fool could figure out why there were so many zombies in the community and why they were concentrated downstairs. I checked my phone and found that there were so many missed calls. Then my phone rang again. Looking at the note, it was Phoenix, in silent mode. No matter how many calls they made, it wouldn't bother me. Watching them scratch their heads in frustration, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Serves them right. 08. Soon they should realize that the so-called supplies were actually only real on the top layer, and the rest below were just sand and stones. Since they wanted to play, how could I prepare sufficient supplies for them? Watching them kill each other in the face of a lack of supplies, how interesting it was. Isn't it much more exciting than TV dramas and movies? Moreover, the corridor was no longer safe now. Through the surveillance, I found that there were already zombies in the corridor. However, the surveillance I installed in the community showed that the unit door hadn't been damaged. So how did the zombies get in? I looked left and right through the surveillance and finally understood. It turned out that yesterday the zombies piled up layer by layer like a human pyramid. They couldn't pile up any higher when they reached the 3rd floor, but the windows on the 3rd floor didn't have anti-theft windows. Under the pressure, the glass couldn't bear it and shattered. Thus, the zombies invaded the building. I didn't know when Phoenix had also moved into my house. Maybe he was worried that there wouldn't be enough food, or maybe he wanted to be brave with more people around. Unfortunately, as my primary target, no matter where he hid, I would never let him live. I operated the surveillance at the door, the kind that could make sounds, on my phone. Suddenly, a gentle singing voice came out. Instantly, the zombies in the corridor seemed to have found their target. One after another, they ran upstairs. When they reached the door, they started banging on it regardless, and the thumping sound was terrifying. The people in the room were like cats with their fur standing on end. They kept cursing my ancestors. Phoenix was also pacing back and forth in a hurry, but no matter what he did, there was no way out. The outside was surrounded by zombies. Could he fly? Just then, a little boy in the room started crying. The crying made the zombies even more frenzied. They started banging on the door even more violently. At the same time, the crying also aroused the fear of the people in the room. "Stop crying. If you cry again, I'll throw you out to feed the zombies." I don't know who shouted. Suddenly, the child cried even louder. At the same time, his parents stood up. "He's still a child. Why are you picking on him?" In their words, the once loving and harmonious big family actually seemed on the verge of a brawl. As for that little boy, he had been a naughty kid since he was young. He was used to stealing. In school, he would want to take whatever he saw. When he saw a classmate had a new pen, he would brazenly ask for it. If the classmate didn't give it to him, he would break it. He had countless records of stealing his neighbor's takeout and parcels in the previous place where he lived. What's more, when waiting for the bus, he asked a stranger to give him the phone to play with. If the stranger didn't give it to him, he would snatch the phone and throw it directly onto the road, letting the cars on the road crush it. After calling the police, his parents were completely unrepentant, acting like they had neither money nor fear of death. In the end, the passers-by could only admit their bad luck. Until now, everyone kept a respectful distance from him. Seeing this, I got an idea. Under the crisis, all laws and morals had lost their due binding force. Then I would act as the judge of this big family. It was time for the mistakes made in the past to be repaid. I turned on the real-time communication function of the phone surveillance and issued a death sentence to that little boy. I don't want to see that little boy live well. Give me a satisfactory answer, or you'll become food for the zombies. 09. As my words fell, everyone in the room seemed to be dumbfounded. They all looked for the source of the sound and finally found that it was me speaking through the surveillance. People are selfish, especially when their lives are threatened. This was true for Phoenix, and it was even more so for Phoenix's family. After a short period of silence, everyone's eyes turned to the little boy's family. There were various expressions such as pity, hatred, and indifference. Since the little boy entered the house at the beginning, he had occupied the best room. When eating, he picked the meat and vegetables into his own bowl. After taking 2 bites and finding it unpalatable, he directly poured it into the trash can. With such a series of annoying actions, he successfully everyone. But everyone endured it for the sake of being relatives. Now, this guy had threatened everyone's safety. How could everyone show mercy? You damned brat, you'll die a bad death. That's right, my Dante is so cute. What's your intention? The family scolded while protecting their precious child behind them, but they seemed to have a poor understanding of the situation. Seeing that they still dared to scold me recklessly, I smiled but didn't say anything. Instead, I operated on my phone to remotely unlock the electronic lock of my door. Remotely unlocking. Please confirm again whether to unlock. As the cold electronic voice sounded, everyone seemed to be stunned. Only Phoenix reacted. He rushed to the family at a sprint speed, punching the mother of Dante and kicking the father of Dante. He grabbed Dante and slapped him left and right. Dante's face immediately turned red and swollen. Suddenly, the little boy's family was dissatisfied, especially the mother of the little boy, since she couldn't push Phoenix away. She simply sat on the ground and cried and wailed, "Shut up. Do you want to make us all die?" With Phoenix's words, he instantly established his own image. Under his words, Dante's family seemed to be heinous criminals, while he, Phoenix, stood up resolutely for everyone's safety. The members of Phoenix's family who had been hesitant at first immediately stood on Phoenix's side after hearing his words. Some even helped Phoenix pull Dante's parents away and pinned Dante to the ground, punching and kicking him. Their only purpose was to beg me not to unlock the door and not let the zombies in. There were also a few smart people who ran behind the door to find all kinds of things to block the door, for fear that I would open it. Seeing the miserable situation of Dante's family, I felt an indescribable sense of pleasure in my heart, especially Dante, who was now half dead on the ground, groaning feebly, completely different from his previous lively self. Good, keep it up. But move the things in front of the door away. I don't like it when people play tricks. After saying that, I turned off the remote communication of the surveillance. Although I didn't expect them to obediently listen to me, I could still create some conflicts among them. 10. I was in a very good mood these days. During the day, I watched their miserable situation through the surveillance, and at night, I went out to patrol. Life went on as usual, now, including Phoenix. Phoenix's family was having a hard time. After eating the remaining bread and canned food, they started drinking the remaining juice of the canned food mixed with a little water. As all the supplies were running out, Phoenix's family once again showed me what the law of the jungle was. They first killed Dante's family. After all, everyone had participated in the action before, worrying that I would open the door. In this regard, everyone's interests were the same. After killing Dante's family, Phoenix's family immediately got to work. They didn't even let the blood go to waste and collected it all. When I saw this scene in the surveillance, especially when they killed and cooked Dante's family like cattle and horses and ate them, I felt disgusted and worried. After all, cannibalism was something that normal people couldn't accept. I became even more determined to get rid of this group of demons. These people would definitely be a scourge if they were let out. After Dante's family was eaten up, Phoenix's eyes turned to a relatively weak family. This was a couple who looked very thin. Everyone subdued them with ease. When the couple was about to be killed and cooked, the husband begged bitterly for them to be spared, but everyone ignored him. Suddenly, Phoenix stopped everyone. At this moment, Phoenix had become the backbone of Phoenix's family. Phoenix proposed that it wasn't impossible to spare the two of them, but he hoped that the husband would go and lure the zombies away. As long as the zombies left, Phoenix's family could go out to find food and wouldn't have to eat them. After hearing Phoenix's idea, everyone nodded quickly and agreed, but the couple's faces were ashen. The roars of the zombies outside the door were still going on. It was obvious what the outcome would be if they went out to lure the zombies away at this time. Going out to lure the zombies away might give the two of them a chance to survive, although the hope was slim. But if they didn't go out, the two of them would become the next meal of Phoenix's family now. Finally, the husband gritted his teeth and decided to go by himself, while his wife stayed in the room as a hostage. 11. Phoenix hypocritically squeezed out some tears and said that it was all out of necessity, while crying. He directed everyone to use bed sheets to make ropes and lower the husband downstairs. He asked the husband to break into the house through the window and then open the door to lure the zombies out of the building. In this way, even if the husband was caught by the zombies wouldn't be able to climb up from downstairs. The husband took a kitchen knife and was lowered down like this. It seemed that he was lucky. The house he broke into through the window seemed to be unoccupied, and there were no zombies inside. He walked around the house and then, with a determined heart, opened the door. Maybe the music I played was a bit loud in the silent corridor. At this time, most of the zombies in the corridor had been attracted to the door of my room by me. When he reached the first floor, the husband suddenly started shouting. Sure enough, as he shouted, those zombies swarmed towards him like sharks smelling blood. In the surveillance, I saw that even the zombies surrounding the door of my room were attracted by the sound and rushed downstairs. Soon, there were only 2 or 3 zombies left at the door, and the others were all attracted by the husband. After shouting, the husband rushed into the stairs leading to the underground garage, shouting as he ran. Behind him, a large group of zombies quickly followed. Unfortunately, there were also zombies in front of him. The young husband then realized that there were actually many zombies in the underground garage. At this moment, he was almost surrounded. He threw the kitchen knife in his hand forward. The knife actually stabbed directly into the head of a zombie, but it didn't help much. It couldn't affect the movement of the zombie at all. The husband was almost on the verge of collapse now. He had originally thought that there weren't many zombies in the dark underground garage. Maybe if he was lucky, he could find a car and drive out. He didn't know where he picked up a baseball bat. He roared to boost his courage and then smashed the head of the zombie that rushed up to him with one blow. The zombies were at different distances. The few lone zombies were all smashed in the head by the husband with the baseball bat, but the husband was almost exhausted now. He either didn't see or didn't have the strength to avoid it even if he saw it. He accidentally let a zombie bite off a piece of his flesh. I'll fight you to the death. As his eyes turned red with blood, the husband threw away the baseball bat at this moment, pounced on that zombie, opened his mouth, and bit down on a piece of flesh hard and tore it off. The zombies behind him soon came up to him. They opened their mouths one by one and bit. In just a minute or two, the young husband's body was torn to pieces. At the same time, Phoenix's family hiding in the room also saw the scene because they required the husband to keep his phone on for a live broadcast when he went out. They were also worried about being outsmarted when they saw the zombies completely stop moving after their heads were smashed. Some people even started cheering, as if they had found a way to deal with the zombies and survive. After some discussion, everyone decided to work together to rush out to find food and a new shelter. Now everyone had weapons in their hands, such as kitchen knives and iron bars. As soon as the door was opened, the remaining 3 zombies pounced on them. At this moment, Phoenix's family seemed like gods descending to earth. They slashed and smashed at the zombies' heads with their knives and bars. They actually killed the zombies in just a few moves. I watched in the surveillance and was speechless. They didn't leave anyone to guard the house and rushed out all at once. Weren't they afraid of being completely wiped out? In the surveillance, I watched them march forward in a mighty way to the first floor. They smashed the heads of all the lone zombies they encountered. I couldn't help but be surprised. Had the personalities of Phoenix's family changed after I was reborn? When did they, who were selfish and cowardly, become so brave? Or did the prion virus change their genes and personalities after they cannibalized each other? Suddenly, I noticed something was wrong. Someone in Phoenix's family was gradually falling behind, and he became more and more strange. 12. That person was walking slower and slower, and it was easy to ignore him. Moreover, now Phoenix's family was eager to find supplies and didn't care about him at all. As that person stopped, his body twitched, and then his body started to squirm. I didn't intend to remind them when I saw this scene in the surveillance. After all, in my opinion, this group of people were no different from demons, since they could even attack their own kind. There was nothing they couldn't do. Before, everyone had seen that the zombies were lured to the underground garage by the young husband, so as soon as they reached the first floor, they immediately blocked the passage to the underground garage, in order to lure away the zombies in front of the unit door. They threw the wife in another direction when they went downstairs to attract the zombies downstairs, but unfortunately, they never expected that someone among them had already been infected. It should be that when they smashed the heads of the zombies, the infected blood of the zombies splashed onto their wounds or other places where the virus could enter their bodies, causing them to be quickly infected. At this moment, Phoenix's family had just opened the unit door and was quietly walking out when the infected person completely turned into a zombie and instantly pounced on someone and started biting. The scream of the person who fell to the ground instantly attracted all the surrounding zombies. Phoenix's family, who had been full of confidence originally, were instantly frightened and at a loss by the sudden change. They looked at the zombies gathering around again and couldn't help but waver. Could they really run out? In this critical moment, Phoenix stood up again. He killed the zombie that used to be a member of Phoenix's family with 2 blows of the stick and then started to encourage everyone. Now there's no food left in the room. If we go back, we can only wait to starve to death. It's better to take a chance and rush out. If we find supplies, we can still survive. What are we afraid of with so many of us? Let's just fight them, under Phoenix's inspiring words. The fighting spirit of Phoenix's family soared again. That's right, who are we afraid of with so many people? Charge, grab a car and rush out. With Phoenix's roar, Phoenix's family rushed forward like they were injected with adrenaline. Perhaps they all knew that the hope was slim, but what else could they do to survive? At first, Phoenix's family smashed the heads of several zombies in a row. Unfortunately, there were originally a lot of zombies in the community, coupled with the music I played remotely and the flashing lights. More and more zombies were attracted, gradually, due to hunger. The strength of Phoenix's family swinging their weapons became weaker and weaker. 1, 2, 3, they were successively pounced on by the zombies and then turned into zombies themselves. I kept my eyes on Phoenix's figure in the surveillance. From the beginning, when he called on everyone to rush out, he himself gradually fell to the back. When the zombies surrounded them, he simply hid at the very back. If Phoenix's family could rush out, he would go out with them. If Phoenix's family was killed by the zombies, he could also retreat. He was indeed a ruthless person. He could even use his own relatives as cannon fodder. No wonder he could be so cruel to me in the previous life. Such a person really deserved to die. Seeing everyone fall to the ground one by one, twitch, and finally turn into zombies, Phoenix let out a shout and rushed upstairs, ignoring the heroic words he had said before. He didn't return to my house but hid in his own house. Through the moment when he opened and closed the door, I saw that there was still a large amount of food in his house. What a sly old fox. I guessed that at first he was worried that the food in his house would be discovered, so he made an excuse to hide with the other members of Phoenix's family. When going downstairs, he also walked at the back because he knew he still had a trump card. He really had a plan for both attack and defense, however. Did Phoenix really think he would be safe hiding in the house? 13. I opened the owner group of the community and sent a message in the group. I heard that the resident of room 1602, building 23 has a large amount of supplies. Can you spare a little for me? After sending the message, I directly turned off my phone and started my daily routine of eating and patrolling again, before going to bed at night. I turned on my phone and found that the owner group had exploded. Several people were at Phoenix, hoping he could provide some supplies, but Phoenix flatly denied it and instead said that there were supplies in my house. Seeing this, I directly posted the surveillance video in the owner group, which became the last straw that broke Phoenix's back. In the video, it was Phoenix running back in a sorry state after abandoning Phoenix's family, and in the moment when he opened and closed the door, large bags of grains came into view. Everyone had been hiding in their houses for so long, they had eaten everything they could, and they were almost at the point of tearing apart the sofa and boiling the leather to fill their stomachs. To dispel everyone's fear of zombies, I also specifically released the video of Phoenix's family smashing the heads of zombies. The starving people were so excited to see that it was so easy to deal with the zombies, and with Phoenix's house having so much stock, how could they hold back? Although no one in the group was saying anything at the moment, I didn't believe that everyone could hold back at night. The dark and windy night was the perfect time to take action, to give more people a chance to survive. Tonight, I deliberately turned off all the lights and sounds. In this way, the zombies in the community wouldn't gather downstairs, and they definitely wouldn't enter the corridor from downstairs specifically, in the darkness. I clearly saw several figures moving among the trees in the community. People had come, they seemed to have reached an agreement and quickly dealt with the few zombies wandering in front of the unit door. Coincidentally, those few zombies were the ones transformed from Phoenix's family. Now that their heads were smashed, they could finally be at peace. They entered the unit door and immediately locked it from the inside to prevent zombies from coming in later, in the surveillance. I watched their sneaky appearance and couldn't help but find it a bit funny. At this time, they should just charge in directly, but they were still doing all this. Soon, they reached Phoenix's door. One of them, who seemed to have some unlocking skills, took out a wire from his body and started fiddling with the lock. Unfortunately, Phoenix couldn't have been unprepared. Ever since I posted the video, he had reinforced and double-locked his door from the inside and blocked the door with things. At this moment, when he heard the sound of unlocking, he was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He knew that once the door was broken open, he would be in danger. Even if these people didn't kill him, he wouldn't escape the fate of becoming a zombie. 14. Guys, I really don't have much food at home. Please spare me. Phoenix started his act again, stalling for time while using a flashlight to irritate the zombies downstairs, hoping to draw them into the unit door to save himself. Hearing the voice from inside the house, the others were stunned for a moment. Then the leader, like person among them, spoke. "We just want some food. We have no other intentions. As long as you give us some food, we'll leave now. Guys, I really don't have any food at home. Please, spare me," Phoenix pleaded, just as they were in a stalemate. I used the surveillance installed outside to record Phoenix's act of using the flashlight to attract the zombies and posted it in the owner group again. When the people outside saw the video, they immediately got angry. "We're still negotiating with you here, but you actually stabbed us in the back. What's there to negotiate about?" After muttering for a while, they started a violent door-breaking action, not caring at all whether the zombies would be attracted. After all, in the quiet night, the sound could travel far. The locksmith took out his tools and soon removed the entire door, without the door blocking. Although Phoenix had blocked the passage with things, the few of them divided the work clearly and quickly moved the things to the corridor. Suddenly, only Phoenix was left in the living room, shivering. The leader, along with the locksmith, a muscular man, and a tall and thin man entered the house. They were like people who had discovered a new world when they saw the abundance of rice, noodles, meat, and vegetables. Their eyes immediately lit up, just as they were about to carry the things. Phoenix trotted over and instantly hugged the leader's thigh, wailing, "Get lost." The leader kicked Phoenix to the ground. "Damn it, you have so much food at home and you don't share any with us." "That's right, you have so much food that you can't finish it all by yourself. Let us help you share some," the others chimed in. As they were talking to themselves, their hands didn't slow down at all when stuffing things into their backpacks, but Phoenix was no easy-going person. After being kicked down, he lay motionless on the ground. When they had finished packing and relaxed their vigilance, he suddenly, without anyone noticing, pulled out a knife and stabbed the muscular man in the kidney. The muscular man let out a tragic cry. He endured the pain and pushed Phoenix away, pulled out the knife. And then his body couldn't support him anymore and he fell to the ground. All this happened so suddenly. After the others reacted, they immediately rushed to Phoenix and punched and kicked him, even to prevent Phoenix from doing anything more extreme. The leader directly stabbed Phoenix's palm through with a knife. Just as Phoenix was about to shout, the tall and thin man covered his mouth and stuffed a rag into his mouth. Just as they were about to leave, they found that one of Phoenix's rooms was locked, and there seemed to be someone moving inside, but the sound was not very clear. 15. The leader and the others looked at each other and finally asked the locksmith to open the door. As the sound of the locksmith unlocking the door came, the people inside seemed to become more excited. Finally, with a click, the locksmith successfully opened the door. When he turned around, he seemed to want to say something. Suddenly, he felt a figure hug him from behind, and then a strong inertia knocked him to the ground. Before the locksmith could open his mouth to curse, a sharp pain came from his neck, and then he smelled a stench. He struggled to raise his head, and the things in his sight gradually turned scarlet. Finally, he twitched along with the zombie on his body and slowly stood up. At this moment, the leader and the tall and thin man finally reacted. Taking advantage of the fact that the zombies in the room were still on the locksmith, the two of them smashed the heads of the two zombies with one blow each. Before they could catch their breath, a little zombie jumped out of the room and bit the tall and thin man's arm. In an instant, the leader kicked the little zombie to the ground, and then the two of them rushed forward and killed the little zombie with a few slashes of their knives. I was dumbfounded watching this in the surveillance. Goodness, what a dramatic turn of events. I recognized those two zombies. One was Phoenix's wife, and the other was his child. Thinking of this, I felt a shiver in my heart. Although I knew Phoenix was heartless, I didn't expect him to be so heartless. A tiger doesn't eat its cubs, but his child had turned into a zombie, and I didn't see even a trace of sadness on his face. After coming back to my senses, I looked at Phoenix's position. To my surprise, Phoenix was gone. I quickly checked the surveillance in the corridor and found that Phoenix was staggering downstairs. At this time, the people in the house also found that Phoenix was gone. Without thinking much, they completely ignored the muscular man's wailing and carried their supplies and ran out. To them, the muscular man was already a burden at this time. Just as they were going downstairs, Phoenix had already reached the unit door. As if he had exhausted all his strength, he fell to the ground and then turned on the flashlight in his hand, shining it into the distance. Seeing this, I understood Phoenix's intention. He probably knew he couldn't escape, so he wanted to take a few more people with him before he died. Since that was the case, I would grant his wish. With this thought in mind, I picked up my phone and remotely controlled to turn on the lights of the building again. Although I didn't look at the screen anymore, the roars of the zombies and the screams and wails of the men still came into my ears through the earphones. Hearing this, my heart finally relaxed completely. This was a sense of pleasure of avenging my great hatred, and it was my own revenge. In the previous life, the murderer who killed me and my parents finally met his end at this moment. 16. 3 years later, the bodies of the zombies had decayed, and the zombies wandering outside had completely lost their ability to move, my parents and I. With the help of the rescue team, we're finally able to return to our homeland. Due to the communication breakdown later, I didn't know what was going on outside, but fortunately, the country was still there. As long as the country was there, we still had hope. Looking at the scattered people emerging from who knows where, we looked at each other and smiled. It was really not easy to survive in the face of a disaster, but fortunately, we all made it, as long as we were still alive. There was still a possibility to create hope. Story 3, December 11th, 2042. Today is exceptionally cold. On my way to work, I observed the overcast sky, feeling a sense of unease growing inside me. I checked the weather forecast on my phone for the upcoming days. It indicated that starting this afternoon, it would snow continuously for several days, with temperatures gradually decreasing. Currently, it's just above freezing, but by the afternoon it will dip below zero over the next few days. Temperatures are expected to drop to around -15 degrees Celsius. I tightened my coat collar and continued my walk to work. My workplace is located in the bustling city center, at a trading company. My home is not far from the office, just a 15-minute walk. By the afternoon, the weather turned bitterly cold, and snowflakes began to fall. Sitting at my desk, I watched the snow outside and couldn't shake a bad feeling. Perhaps it's because I am naturally prone to anxiety. I have a history of neurosis, a kind of psychological disorder that causes frequent anxiety. Although my condition hasn't fully recovered, I blamed this familiar onslaught on my recurring issues. Despite reassuring myself, after work, I braved the snow and went to the large supermarket near my home. I live on the 18th floor of an old residential building in the city center, a house belonging to my parents. They moved back to their hometown after retirement and don't live here anymore, so this 3-bedroom apartment is currently occupied only by me. I filled a shopping cart with groceries and lugged 2 large shopping bags home, panting slightly from the effort. At the entrance of my building, Grandma from downstairs greeted me. "Sarah, why did you buy so much?" she asked. "Grandma, I ran out of food at home, so I bought a bit more this time," I replied casually as I entered the elevator. Truthfully, I'm not fond of small talk. Even though I've lived in this neighborhood for over a decade, I'm not close to anyone. At most, I respond when someone greets me. My asocial nature has made me somewhat invisible. This is not just in my neighborhood, even at work. I don't have friends with whom I can easily chat. Most of the time, I keep to myself and rarely get noticed. Once home, I quickly organized the groceries and checked the food I already had at home. There was still a good amount of rice, flour, oil, vegetables, and fruits left, including what I bought today. I now have 2 20-kilogram bags of rice, 3 10-kilogram bags of flour, 2 canisters of cooking oil, and my fridge is packed with vegetables, fruits, and meat. Even if I don't leave my house for a month or two, I have enough to last me. The temperature dropped to -10 degrees Celsius the next day, and -15 degrees the day after. On the 4th day, the snow finally stopped, and the temperature reached -18 degrees. Dressed in a thick down jacket and walking on the snow-covered path, an idea popped into my head, and I made a detour to the supermarket again. This time, I didn't buy any food but picked up 2 packs of bottled water, each containing 10 500-milliliter bottles. Thinking of the 2 large water containers at home, I knew I wouldn't run out of water anytime soon. After getting home, I called my parents to ask if it was cold in their hometown. They said it was even colder there, reaching -20 degrees. Luckily, they have a traditional heated bed that keeps them very warm. Moreover, they mentioned that food was plentiful in their hometown. This year, the corn harvested fills the entire yard, along with radishes, cabbages, green onions, potatoes, and sweet potatoes, which are all packed tightly in the cellar. There's also a well in the yard, making water access very convenient. After graduating from university, my brother and his wife took over some farmland back home to start farming. This is also why our parents insisted on returning home to retire, as they could help with taking care of their grandchildren. On the 5th day, the temperature continued to drop to -22 degrees Celsius. On the 6th day, it started to snow again, reaching -23 degrees. The snow persisted on the 7th day, dropping to -26 degrees. At this point, more and more people began to feel uneasy and rushed to the supermarkets to shop frantically. In this second-tier northern city, such low temperatures hadn't been seen in many years. Even then, the city was actively clearing the snow, and people hadn't stopped working or production. These past few days, aside from buying a shopping cart full of items from the supermarket daily, I also visited an outdoor goods store and bought many warming supplies, including insulated clothing, electric blankets, Portable heaters, and solar panels. It was like ants moving house, as I slowly brought a little more home each day, gradually accumulating. Today, the snow has been falling for a week nonstop, although not heavily. There are no signs of it stopping, and the temperature has already reached -30 degrees. Finally, the government issued a notice: classes are suspended, and all industries, except those essential for daily life, should avoid going out. The situation back home is similar. The village urged everyone not to go out and to stay home to keep warm. Knowing that my parents and my brother's family are together is reassuring. My company announced that starting tomorrow, we would work from home and distributed essential supplies to all employees. Each person received a 20-kilogram bag of rice, 10 kilograms of millet, 10 kilograms of flour, and a 5-liter can of cooking oil. Although these items aren't usually very expensive, they are lifesavers now that it's impossible to squeeze into the supermarkets. Since the items were too heavy for me to carry home and I couldn't find a taxi, my company's leadership arranged for Thomas, who was going my way, to give me a ride. Thomas, around 25 or 26, joined the company with me 2 years ago. He looks average but is tall and burly, not someone you'd want to mess with. We haven't talked much and aren't even close acquaintances. Thomas is also a man of few words. The two of us, both not very talkative, had nothing to say on the way. When we reached my building, I pressed the elevator button while Thomas helped me move the items inside. Just then, a dejected couple from the 16th floor entered the elevator. Seeing all the goods in the elevator, their eyes lit up. Mrs. He, who I knew, quickly greeted me. "Sarah, you're so lucky to have snagged so much. My husband and I went to the supermarket and couldn't even get in, so we came back empty-handed." Her husband, henpecked, quickly chimed in, "Yes, I've never seen the supermarket so crowded. It's pitiful. We have 3 children at home. What will we do if we can't buy food?" I immediately understood their hint. Before they could continue, I pulled the supplies closer to me and said, "Sir, ma'am, these are from my company. We don't have much at home either, and we'll have to survive on these supplies for the coming days." The couple's faces fell immediately. Thomas spoke up, "Sarah, I'll try going to the supermarket again tonight to see if I can pick up some more stuff. We should stock up on some more food." I knew what Thomas meant by this. He was trying to help me. He wanted to give the neighbors the impression that I wasn't alone, that I had a boyfriend who would eventually move in with me. I have a strong sense of crisis, and I could tell that Thomas shared this feeling. After dropping me off at home and about to leave, I stopped him and asked him to stay for a while. I didn't want it to look suspicious to the neighbors that he came and left so quickly. Thomas had thought of this too, but he felt awkward bringing it up. After all, he's a man and was worried I might think he had ulterior motives. Thomas sat on the living room couch while I made him some hot tea and turned on the TV for him to watch. I went to tidy up my things. After more than half an hour, I returned to the living room and noticed Thomas constantly checking his watch. It was already 7 p.m. and it had gotten dark. He was clearly anxious to get home. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I hurriedly said, "Thomas, I'm sorry for keeping you. You should head home now. Thank you so much for today." Thomas got up to leave and went to the window, his brow furrowing unconsciously. I joined him at the window, and to my surprise, the snow was falling heavier, looking like goose feathers as it thickly blanketed everything. I hadn't noticed the snow getting so intense while I was tidying up. It was very dark outside, and Thomas, who had been watching TV, hadn't noticed either. No one expected the snow to come down so heavily in just over half an hour. Thomas hurriedly said goodbye, worried that the accumulating snow would make driving impossible. I stood by the window and looked down at the street. From this angle, I could see the entrance to the nearby supermarket. Despite the heavy snowfall, the crowd at the supermarket had grown even larger, packed with people. I checked the temperature on my phone. It was -35 degrees, the indoor thermometer read only 10 degrees, and I still hadn't taken off my down jacket since coming home. It was simply too cold outside. And even indoors, I hadn't managed to warm up. Before the temperature dropped, it was 25 degrees inside. Now, even with the heating on, it was only 10 degrees, which showed how severe the drop in temperature was. Suddenly, there was a loud crash outside on the street, a car accident. Then, several more crashes followed as multiple cars collided in a pile-up. I grabbed my binoculars to get a better look and saw Thomas's car among the wrecked vehicles. I called Thomas to check if he was all right. He got out of the car, shivering from the cold, and assured me he was fine. With the temperature so low outside, the people involved in the accident could only wait for the traffic police to arrive, but it was too cold to stand around waiting. So many sought refuge in nearby shops to escape the cold, but aside from that large supermarket, no other shops were open. It was nearly a kilometer walk to that supermarket, in the end. They decided not to leave and stomped their feet while waiting for the traffic police to arrive. However, after waiting for almost an hour, no one showed up. Everyone was unbearably cold. The customer service of the transportation department responded that accidents were everywhere and the traffic police were overwhelmed. They needed to continue waiting. They couldn't wait any longer, nearly freezing to death. Some, whose vehicles were not severely damaged, started their cars and left. If they didn't leave soon, the heavy snow would bury the roads, making them impassable. It wasn't just the people waiting for the traffic accident to be cleared, but also fewer people were seen around the supermarket. People hurried home through the thick snow, fearing being stranded outside. When I checked the current news, I saw empty shelves in major supermarkets. The goods were almost completely sold out. Those stranded struggled to make their way home, their faces filled with despair. Unable to wait for the traffic police any longer, those with severely damaged vehicles also stopped waiting and turned to acquaintances nearby, hoping to take shelter from the storm in their homes. At this time, taxis were unavailable, and public transportation was paralyzed except for the subway, which was too crowded to enter. Thomas, having no acquaintances nearby and unable to return home, decided to walk a kilometer to the supermarket to stay warm. Then, his phone rang. "Hey, Thomas. Come over to my place for now. You can leave once the subway is back up later." It was my call. Thomas hesitated for a moment and then said, "Okay, thanks." After a while, my doorbell rang, and through the security camera, I saw it was Thomas. I opened the door. At that moment, Thomas's face was bluish-purple from the cold. I quickly handed him a hot water bottle. He took it, thanked me, and sat down on the sofa to warm up. I went to the kitchen and brought him a steaming bowl of noodle soup. Placing it on the table, "Have something warm," he thanked me again, took the chopsticks, and began to eat slowly. I sat on a nearby sofa, waiting for him to finish, my eyes filled with concern as I looked at him and said, "Maybe the situation is worse than we thought." Thomas looked out the window at the still heavily falling snow, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "Hopefully, the snow stops soon." Thomas and I each called home to check in. The situation at my parents' place was similar. With heavy snowfall, their house, a 3-story bungalow, had independent heating systems and even a traditional clay-bed stove for backup. Clay-bed stoves were somewhat outdated, but my parents liked them, so they had one installed in every room. After hanging up, I heard Thomas still on the phone. "Dad, I still can't come back. Please take care and keep warm," only to hear an angry voice on the other end. "You little rascal. Not figuring out how to bring us supplies. Do you want us to freeze and starve to death? You ungrateful wretch, you might as well die out there." The person on the phone hung up harshly. Thomas's eyes moved away from his phone. He looked up and met my gaze. There was an embarrassed look in his eyes, but he said nothing. I quickly looked away, pretending I hadn't heard anything. We had been waiting for over an hour, and it was already 11 p.m., with the heavy snow showing no signs of stopping, if it continued like this overnight. The first floor might get flooded. I was constantly keeping an eye on the current news, and the situation was already quite bad. The only places that still had people outside were the supermarkets and subway stations. In the supermarket, customers who could make it home had done so, leaving only the staff and those who were stuck nearby and couldn't get home in time. The subway stations weren't as crowded as before, but due to the low temperatures, a lot of snow had seeped into the subway entrances, causing malfunctions at several stations, and the subway service had to be suspended. The few people and staff trapped in the subway stations had no choice but to stay there to keep warm. It wasn't just the city. Almost all cities in the north were experiencing severe cold weather. The south was a bit better, but temperatures there had reached lows not seen in many years, dropping to below 10 degrees, and they kept falling each day. This snow disaster was not localized. Almost the entire northern hemisphere was experiencing the erosion of a cold wave. Online, apocalyptic discussions were rampant. Although it was only the first day of the shutdown, people were already panicking. Suddenly, I thought of something and rushed to check if the water had been cut off. In such cold weather, the water pipes could easily freeze. When I turned on the tap and found that the water was still running, I quickly used every usable container in the kitchen to collect water. Seeing what I was doing, Thomas also went to both bathrooms to find all possible containers to store water. We both understood that a water cut was inevitable. Currently, my home had 4 19-liter barrels of water, 60 half-liter bottles of mineral water, and 10 5-liter jugs of water. Our current water storage was reassuring. After filling all the containers, Thomas washed his used dishes and utensils. By then, it was almost dawn. I settled Thomas in the guest room and went to sleep in the master bedroom. I quickly fell asleep but grew increasingly cold. Unable to bear it, I woke up shivering, wrapped tightly in my blanket. I checked my phone for the temperature. The outdoor temperature of -43 degrees instantly jolted me awake. The indoor temperature had also dropped below zero. Shivering, I got out of bed. took out an electric blanket from the wardrobe, laid it on the bed, and topped it with another thick blanket, thinking that Thomas must also be freezing next door. I debated whether or not to bring him an electric blanket, considering the propriety between men and women. I wondered if it was inappropriate to knock on his door in the middle of the night, after a mental struggle. Fearing for his life, I decided to take him the electric blanket. Wearing my thickest clothes, I knocked on the neighboring door, but after a long time, there was no response, which made me anxious. Fearing something had happened to him, I hesitated to just push the door open, as he was a young man and could potentially overpower me if he had ill intentions. I stood at the door, freezing, but eventually turned the doorknob and went inside. To me, the unknown risk was less significant than a human life. This harsh weather could potentially freeze someone to death in their sleep. I approached the bed where Thomas still lay motionless. I shook him gently. "Thomas, wake up. I've brought you an electric blanket." He didn't react at all. I shook him harder, but he still didn't move an inch. A bad feeling washed over me as I touched his forehead and felt its intense heat. Considering his unresponsive, feverish state, I figured he must be delirious from the fever. If left unattended, he might just freeze to death. I continued calling his name and even pinched his philtrum and neck vigorously to wake him up. Finally, he showed signs of waking from his stupor. I hurriedly fetched some fever-reducing medicine and popped it into his mouth. I intended to give him some warm water, but the water in the kettle had already turned cold. With no other choice, he had to swallow the medicine with the ice-cold water. The chilly water jolting through his throat somewhat cleared his mind. While he was still lucid, I helped him shift position and laid an electric heating blanket under him. I also brought over an extra thick blanket and placed it on top of his existing one. Thank you." Even in his groggy state, he didn't forget to express his gratitude. After all was set, he fell back asleep, and I too was left slightly sweating from the exertion. For tonight, this makeshift arrangement would have to do. We would think of other ways to keep warm tomorrow. I checked my phone for the temperature. It was minus 45 degrees outside, and the indoor temperature had dropped even further to minus 8 degrees. Such low indoor temperatures could only mean one thing: the heating was out. At a little past 4 in the morning, I opened Instagram and joined the building's group chat, where a flood of messages widened my eyes. Many were awakened by the cold, all questioning why the heating had stopped. The property management responded, "Due to the severe cold, the heating system has malfunctioned and is temporarily shut down. Repair work is currently underway." Lying in my own bed, wrapped tightly in blankets, I read the messages in the group chat, unable to feel sleepy anymore. My phone kept buzzing with non-stop messages from the group. I had previously set these groups to mute, but now, to stay informed about most people's situations, I had switched them back to normal notifications. As I scrolled through the group messages, the initial complaints about the heating outage gradually turned desperate as people began to seek help. Someone reported that a family member had fallen ill from the cold, and they couldn't get through to emergency services because the snow outside had piled up over a meter high, making it impossible for vehicles to move. Others were pleading with neighbors for extra thick blankets, warm clothes, or emergency medical supplies. I stared at my phone for over an hour. Around 6 a.m., someone knocked on my door. Shivering, I got up and donned the professional cold weather gear I had prepared, much warmer than regular down jackets, but I only had 2 women's sets, which wouldn't fit Thomas's large frame. I opened the door to find Thomas awake. "You're up," I said. Thomas nodded. We sat down in the living room together, momentarily lost for words. We both had a lot to discuss regarding plans for what came next, but we were unsure how to start. I suspected it wasn't just us. Everyone was likely filled with a fear of the unknown future. Thomas was still wearing the same down jacket he had arrived in, shivering as he sat there. I then realized that his body, only just beginning to recover, was still very weak. In such low temperatures, wearing so little was definitely inadequate. I went to my room and fetched some thick clothes that had once belonged to my dad. Urging Thomas to layer up with an additional cotton jacket and pants, Thomas took out his phone. "The current temperature reading shows it's minus 48 degrees Celsius outside and minus 12 degrees inside. We can't go on like this," Thomas stated bluntly. "No matter how much we bundle up, these temperatures could kill. We need to find a way to keep warm, for now." It was an unspoken agreement that Thomas would stay here. Given the situation, neither of us could leave the house, at the moment. The only heating tools I have are a small space heater and 2 electric blankets, but they're barely effective, especially as the temperature continues to drop. "We do have plenty of food and water, enough to last us both for 2 months, I explained. I had just checked and found that the water supply had been cut off. I'm usually very cautious, but for some reason, I felt a deep trust in Thomas from the start. It was just a feeling. Inexplicable. Maybe it was the aura he emitted that made me feel at ease. Since we were sharing a room, I saw no point in hiding anything and laid all my cards on the table. My openness made Thomas feel trusted. Despite the cold environment, it warmed our hearts. We could build a simple stove by splitting some furniture for burning. It should keep us going for a while. Thomas suggested. A stove. Do you know how to make one? I asked, surprised. It seemed unusual for someone of his generation to know how to make such a thing. Thomas nodded. I've never made one, but I understand the principle. I can dismantle the metal from the air conditioner or fridge to make a simple stove, and use aluminum foil and tape to create a makeshift chimney. With a stove, we can warm up, cook, and boil water. Suddenly, I rushed to the kitchen to check if the gas stove was still working. As expected, the heating was off. And so was the gas stove, since both used natural gas. My thoughts had been too chaotic to consider cooking as a future issue. Thomas and I shared some biscuits and drank some ice water for breakfast, then started preparing to build the stove. Thomas hadn't fully recovered yet, though he had taken some medication. He was still quite weak. Tasks like dismantling metal and chopping furniture with a cleaver were strenuous for him, but he insisted on not letting me take over, so he took on the primary tasks while I assisted him. After a whole day of effort, though exhausting, it made us feel less unbearably cold. By evening, the makeshift stove was ready. The stove was cylindrical, about 80 centimeters tall with a circumference of approximately 50 centimeters, made from the metal of a dismantled fridge and air conditioner. It had a small chimney that extended out through a window gap in the second bedroom, which we sealed off with tape. We placed the stove in the second bedroom because it was smaller and could be kept warmer more effectively. The room had a 1.5-meter bed, and we brought in another 1.2-meter temporary bed so that Thomas and I could sleep separately. Despite the inconveniences of a man and woman sharing a room, we had to overlook minor issues for the sake of survival. To make it less awkward, I hung a large bedsheet as a curtain between the two beds, giving us each our separate space. As for concerns about personal safety, I had dismissed such thoughts. After all, in such a cold environment, just surviving is difficult enough. Who has the energy to think about anything else? Besides, I can tell that Thomas isn't that kind of person right now. The most important thing for us is to stay alive. It's enough if the two of us can live together peacefully. After we fixed the stove and loaded it with some split furniture wood, the cabin slowly began to warm up. It's now 9 p.m. With the outdoor temperature at minus 53 degrees Celsius and the indoor temperature at minus 22 degrees. Before we started the stove, the indoor temperature had already reached minus 30 degrees. Now, after just a short while of burning, it has risen by 8 degrees, which has really cheered us up. Although the snow is still falling and the temperature continues to drop, we will do our best to persevere. Communication has not yet been cut off, although my phone has been ringing all day. I've hardly paid attention to the messages in the group chat. In a way, this is also an escape. I don't want to pry into others' suffering. Just a brief look during the day revealed several messages about deaths. Though there's currently no power outage, the air conditioning lost its heating capability a long time ago. People without any solutions can only endure. If they can't endure, they face the fate of freezing to death. This is just the second day of the disaster, and already I don't know how many people around us have frozen to death. What will happen to people moving forward? The disaster area is too large for the government to conduct a full-scale rescue right now. The best thing we can do is wait and try to hold on. This is also what the officials are urging. My parents are still holding on for now. At this moment, Thomas's phone rang again, and he hung up directly. Today, his phone rang many times, and each time he hung up, each hang-up seemed to worsen his mood. In fact, he did answer a call in the morning, only to be met with insults and accusations instead of concern. The caller ID showed a man's name. I think it was his father. That's his private matter, so I didn't feel it was right to ask. We've had a long day and are both exhausted. Before going to sleep, Thomas placed a pot frozen into a block of ice on the stove, allowing the stove's heat to slowly melt the ice inside, to make this small room a bit warmer, and while the power was still on, we also turned on a small heater, lying in the 1.5-meter wide bed, separated by a curtain from Thomas's makeshift bed. We each had an electric blanket. Lying there, we didn't have to worry about freezing to death. Now, at 10:30 p.m., the indoor temperature is minus 16 degrees, and the outdoor temperature is minus 55 degrees. Fortunately, the snow has finally started to lessen. The first floor was already buried in snow, and the second floor was half submerged. If the snow stops tonight, it might offer people a chance to catch their breath. I didn't sleep well last night because of the cold, but lying in bed now, I quickly fell asleep. Thomas lay in bed, his gaze fixed on his phone. His father finally stopped sending insulting messages and instead began pleading with him, hoping he could find a way to come back. He received a text on WeChat. Thomas, please bring back some warm clothes and food. We can't hold on much longer. Can you really bear to watch your own family die? Thomas typed back, how am I supposed to come back, just to freeze to death outside? The other person replied, you ungrateful wretch, even if you die, you should die on the way delivering supplies. Thomas responded, so you mean, even if there's a slight chance I can bring supplies back, I should risk it, even if it means I might die. This is what you owe me. I raised you and bestowed upon you immense kindness, a debt you could never repay. Not even if you died for me, they said. The so-called upbringing involved being kicked out to sleep in the hallway with my stepmother and being your scapegoat, subjected to daily beatings and scolding. If that's how you choose to raise a child, why weren't the other two children treated the same? If you think I owe you, don't they owe you as well? You wretched creature, how dare you curse my children? You deserve a horrible death. May lightning strike you. Thomas turned off his phone. His heart sinking back into a painful struggle. He was relieved he hadn't made it back home the day before yesterday, at least at such a critical moment. He didn't have to face the ugliness of familial ties directly. The next morning, I woke from my sleep and checked the temperature on my phone. It was 3 degrees indoors and minus 55 degrees outside. I breathed a sigh of relief. Grateful not to be in the sub-zero temperatures anymore. I was still in my cold weather gear, yet I no longer felt cold. I got out of bed and pulled back the curtains. The snow had stopped, and at last, it was a clear day. This sparked a glimmer of hope in me. I first called my parents to ensure they were safe, then started browsing the news. The official report listed the national death toll due to the extreme cold at over 30,000 people. The comments section was filled with outrage. No one believed the numbers. Nearly everyone accused the figures of being fabricated, citing instances of people freezing to death around them. How could it possibly be just tens of thousands nationwide? People were furious, questioning why help hadn't arrived yet, why was there no heating or water, and why had the electricity gone out? When would this dreadful weather end? Reading these comments, my brow furrowed. Although we hadn't lost power yet, seeing the situation in other areas, it seemed only a matter of time. At that moment, I heard Thomas getting up. He pulled back the curtain dividing us, and sunlight flooded in. I managed to smile and greeted him. Good morning, Thomas. After all, we were still alive, and it was best to try to keep our spirits up. Seeing the girl smiling in the sunlight, Thomas felt a warmth in his heart. Overnight, the water in the big pot on the stove had heated up. Thomas added more wood, stoking the fire. I poured some water into a smaller pot and cooked 2 packs of instant noodles. The bubbling noodles released an enticing aroma, making our mouths water. For us, who hadn't had a warm meal the day before, this was a feast in the freezing weather. Thomas and I savored the hot meal, feeling content. Our wood supply might last a month at most. If the weather doesn't improve or help doesn't arrive, it might get tough. Thomas paused. Let's take it one day at a time, I replied, surprisingly relaxed. Aren't you afraid of dying? Thomas asked, noticing my indifferent attitude. We sat by the stove, my gaze drifting to the bright sunlight outside, which was almost blinding, causing me to squint slightly. What's the use of being afraid? Since it doesn't help, why drown in anxiety? I shifted my gaze back to Thomas. I usually remind myself this way. Thomas smiled. That's a good method. Just then, bang, 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 loud knocks resounded in our ears. Thomas gestured for me to stay put while he put on a thick cotton jacket and stepped out of the small room. As he opened the door, a piercing chill rushed into the room. I shivered all over, and at the same time, Thomas shut the door. My phone was connected to the outdoor surveillance. I turned it on and saw 2 people outside, dressed in heavy clothes and wearing hats, scarves, and masks, making it impossible to identify them. Thomas, standing behind the door, asked, "Who is it?" The sound of a man's voice startled the 2 outside, who seemed to guess something. One of them, slightly taller, pleaded, "Is Sarah home? All 3 of our kids are sick. Do you have any medicine that you could spare us?" I recognized them. It was the couple from the 16th floor I had met in the elevator the day before yesterday. "We don't have any medicine. Please go back," Thomas bluntly refused. "Please, we're begging you. All 3 children are sick from the cold and can't hold on much longer. We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. At times like these, we have no one to turn to but our neighbors." The woman was sobbing and pleading. The disaster had just begun, and people hadn't yet lost their humanity. Coming to us for help likely meant they were indeed in trouble. After hesitating and ensuring our safety, I decided to help them this one time, especially because it involved 3 children. I gathered some anti-inflammatory and fever-reducing drugs and approached the door. I opened a small security window in the door and passed out 2 boxes of medicine. The couple took the medicine, and seeing that there really was a man in my house, realized we weren't just bluffing. "Sarah, thank you so much. Let us know if you need anything." "We can provide anything but food," the sister-in-law said. Filled with gratitude, I don't need anything at the moment, I replied and closed the security window, hurrying back to the small room. Standing at the door for a short while, I felt like I was going to freeze solid. Back in the room, Thomas remained silent. Thomas, do you disapprove of what I did? I asked, shivering near the stove. Thomas shook his head. No, the disaster has just begun. Being too cold-hearted now might make us targets later when people are desperate, actually. If you weren't here, I wouldn't have dared to give out the medicine. Letting them see you, knowing that I'm not a lone woman, probably made them think twice. You did the right thing. Helping others as much as you can while ensuring your own safety is the right choice. Thank you. No need to thank me. Everything here belongs to you. You have the right to manage it. Plus, I'm also benefiting from your kindness, Thomas said. Thomas, we're in a symbiotic relationship now. I'm very aware of that. Right now, it seems I am the one who relies on you, I confessed. Thomas, feeling somewhat embarrassed by my frankness, looked away. Thank you very much, I said, feeling even more embarrassed. No, it's my fault you can't be with your family. I actually don't want to go back there, Thomas replied, then paused, surprised by his own openness about his private feelings. Maybe we should change the subject. Oh, okay. After saying that, Thomas quickly took out his phone and started browsing the news. Several calm days passed, and now the temperature outside was minus 60 degrees, a temperature so cold that stepping outside could turn someone into an ice sculpture. This extreme cold had persisted for several days without dropping further. If it had continued to drop, our small stove wouldn't have been able to cope. A few days ago, the electricity went out, followed by the internet. People were afraid to go outside and couldn't get any news from the outside world, living as if isolated on a deserted island. Although the snow had stopped, the extreme cold continued to drive people to despair. After the power outage, my solar panels came in handy for charging our phones and a desk lamp. However, they were not enough to power a small sun lamp or an electric blanket. Our cabin's temperature hovered around 0 degrees, just enough to keep us alive. The toilet attached to the cabin was at minus 10 degrees. Every trip to the bathroom was quick and urgent. It was no longer a place to leisurely browse on your phone. After the water supply was cut off, the waste in the toilet couldn't be flushed away. I started lining the toilet with bags, tying them up when full and replacing them with new ones. The waste would freeze quickly, thankfully not giving off much of a smell. Being unable to go out or communicate with the outside world left me idle. And I found myself sleeping more and more, often half the day. I felt like a hibernating animal. Every day, Thomas would check on our safety, cook, and clean, almost mothering me. Once all the chores were done and he was bored, he would read. We had a study in our house with hundreds of books of various genres, all of which Thomas had moved into the cabin. Before we lost communication, I had contacted my family. They had moved into the basement, where they had also relocated 2 traditional clay beds, keeping them heated from morning to night. My brother was resourceful, having connected the basement to the cellar, so food was not a worry. As for water, they made do by melting snow. Fuel was not a problem either. They had dragged corn from the yard which they could use both for eating and heating. Knowing that my family was in a better situation than I was here brought me peace of mind, to keep my parents from worrying. I told them I was with my boyfriend, and he was keeping me safe. Before we lost contact, Thomas's family kept urging him to send supplies. Although he was torn and struggled with the decision, he wisely chose not to risk his life by attempting the dangerous journey. However, the fact that his family had managed to hold out until the communication was cut off showed they had some means of keeping warm. Their frequent pressures for Thomas to return, whether for heating or food, suggested they wouldn't last much longer. Today, Thomas and I sat beside the stove, drinking porridge. We still had plenty of rice, and while the small stove kept us warm, it also allowed us to simmer the porridge slowly. Thomas, did you hear that noise? I asked listlessly. The cold wind was howling outside, and we had become too comfortable these past days. Our vigilance significantly lowered. Suddenly, Thomas stood up. Not good. Someone might be trying to pry the door open. Don't move. I'll go check. As soon as Thomas opened the cabin door, the doorstop issued a piercing noise. The intruders had only managed to unlock the door, but with the doorstop in place, they couldn't enter immediately. Thomas quickly approached and slammed the door shut with a loud bang, which had been opened just a crack. Holding a cleaver in his hand, Thomas said coldly, "Get lost." The people outside weren't intimidated. Not knowing how many they were, they began to hack at the door with axes and kitchen knives, creating a terrifying noise. While they chopped, they cursed, "Open up, hand over all the food, or we'll kill you." I watched everything through the crack in the door, nearly paralyzed with fear. There were clearly several people outside. Thomas, no matter how tough, was no match for them. I grabbed a knife and ran to Thomas's side. ready to face them together. Although I wasn't much of a fighter, I was prepared to resist with all my might. Before long, the reinforced door couldn't withstand their forceful attacks and was completely forced open. Seeing 5 or 6 people armed and charging at us, Thomas reacted quickly, striking one in the arm with his cleaver. Then he pulled out another dagger hidden on his body and stabbed another in the heart. A tall man swung a kitchen knife at me. Thomas, quick as he was, couldn't handle so many at once and couldn't protect me. I closed my eyes and swung wildly, without any technique, as the man's kitchen knife nearly reached my head. Suddenly, the man was stabbed from behind and fell to the ground. I opened my eyes and recognized my saviors. It was the couple from the 16th floor. With Thomas's fighting skills, and the help of the couple and myself, we managed to overcome the remaining attackers. But the husband from the couple was severely injured. We hurriedly brought the couple inside. Nowadays, with a lack of medicine and their extreme weakness, it was clear they had pushed themselves beyond their limits to help us. Soon after, the man passed away, and his wife, collapsing in tears, still managed to plead, "Sarah, I'm not going to make it either. Today, my husband and I pushed ourselves to come help. We've been sick for a while, and there's no food left at home. Please, take care of my 3 children, I beg you." As she spoke, she began to cough violently, unable to stop, and suddenly coughed up blood. "Sister-in-law, hang in there. I'm going to find medicine for you. Don't worry. I'll take care of the 3 children. I'll look after them," I said, crying and frantically searching for medicine. Thomas didn't dare delay any longer and rushed to the 16th floor to bring the 3 children up. I found some anti-inflammatory and cough-suppressing medicine and tearfully tried to administer it to her, but she refused, gripping my hand tightly with her frail, bony fingers. "I won't take it. Save it for yourselves. Save it for the children." The children were finally brought up and began to cry loudly as they lay on their weak mother. Their mother comforted the children, assuring them everything was going to be okay and asked them to stay put and listen to me. She mentioned that Sister Sarah would take care of them. After she said these words, it was as if a great weight had been lifted off her shoulders, and she fainted. Thomas and I are not doctors, and we don't have any medical supplies at home. We knew that she probably wouldn't make it. Thomas and I moved her to a bed and let the children stay by their mother's side. We then went outside to deal with the bodies. When I pulled the masks off the faces of those 6 villains, I couldn't help but start retching uncontrollably. They were all neighbors from our building. A young couple from across the hall, a young man from downstairs, an older man from the 7th floor, and a woman from the 12th floor. I had no idea when they had conspired to rob me, but I understood that despite knowing there was a strong man in my house, they targeted me because they had seen me bringing substantial supplies home before the disaster. It's been 22 days since the disaster struck, and many families have run out of supplies. No one came out to see the commotion after such a big incident. I guess there aren't many survivors left in this building. Thomas and I broke the lock on the opposite door and moved the bodies inside. In their small room was a metal basin burning wood blocks. It seemed a lot had been burned in that basin, and without a chimney, the walls were all blackened. Even with this heating method, the temperature in the room was still around -20 degrees Celsius. It appears that our small stove was still the best at keeping us warm. We checked, and their home had no food left. This explained why they had come to rob us. Thomas looked at the burnt remains of their furniture and said, "This furniture will keep us warm for a while, right? And the wooden furniture from sister-in-law's house can also be used as fuel." We locked the fire escape door. Now no one could come up to this floor for the time being. After returning, I went to check on my sister-in-law on the bed. Her breathing was faint. I held the 3 children tightly, tears continuously falling. Thomas ladled out some porridge for the children, telling them to eat slowly. The children, starved and frozen, eagerly devoured the warm food without a second thought. The eldest, a 9-year-old girl, the middle child a 6-year-old boy, and the youngest, a 3-year-old boy. It was evident that their physical condition was much better than their parents', showing they had been well protected. My sister-in-law did not survive the night. She stopped breathing. Thomas and I moved her into the room across, laying her next to her husband, and covered them with a sheet. We stood silently with the children, holding a modest funeral for them. That night, I couldn't sleep at all, distressed by the day's bloody events, which had severely traumatized me. I was busy before and didn't have time to think, but now lying down, the discomfort and panic were overwhelming. Thomas sensed something was wrong and whispered through the curtain, "Sarah, can we talk? Could you come over here?" With the 3 children lying beside me, I carefully got out of bed and sat next to Thomas on the other side of the curtain. Thomas gently took my hand. "I'm here for you." My tears started falling uncontrollably again, and I quickly wiped them away. No, they'll freeze." "Sarah, would you like to hear about my family?" Thomas's voice was softer than ever. He held my hand. He didn't respond, merely sitting there in a daze. "When I was 8, my mother passed away. Just over 3 months later, my father brought home a stepmother. She was his mistress and a cruel woman. After moving into our house, she made me sleep in the hallway. Later, she dumped all the household chores on me and demanded that I serve her. If she was the slightest bit dissatisfied, she would beat and scold me. I had hoped my father would protect me, but he didn't. He joined her in abusing me. Finally, after enduring until the college entrance exams, I got into a university in the city and escaped from them. For years, we had no contact. Unexpectedly, after I had been working for 2 years and made the down payment on my own house, they shamelessly showed up, a family of 4, and refused to leave my home. You know what happened next? There was a heavy snowstorm, and I couldn't return. That man kept pressuring me daily to send them supplies. His words finally snapped me back to reality, and my gaze fixed on his face. Thomas, it must be very painful for you. Yes, I suffered for many years, even contemplated suicide multiple times, but I survived, and I've been slowly healing myself, seeking redemption. So, Sarah, remember, nothing is insurmountable. Thomas placed his hand on his heart, his expression deeply sincere, because we have a strong instinct to persevere. As long as we are willing, we can endure anything. Unable to control myself any longer, I moved closer into Thomas's embrace. If he could break free from the curse of not being loved by his father, why couldn't I overcome my fears? In the days that followed, my spirits gradually recovered. We lived in this small cabin with our 3 children. At first, the children were quite reserved, but gradually, as they saw that we genuinely cared for them, they let their guard down and became more lively. Before, Thomas and I were scarcely active in this cabin, so we ate very little. Now, with 3 children, if we economize, our current food supply could last for another month and a half. Now, 33 days after the disaster, it's January 24th, 2043. We are planning that when we run out of food and ammunition around March 15th, it will be spring, things will start to bloom, and perhaps the weather will warm up. This is our hope, and it will sustain us. Due to previous starvation and cold, the 3 children were not in good health and were prone to sickness and fever. Fortunately, we still had some medical supplies stored, and with careful attention, the children's health gradually improved. Outside, most people have died, although everyone tried to find ways to keep warm. Very few have managed to last as long as we have. Most died from illnesses linked to the severe cold without receiving treatment. Others died from the combined effects of hunger and cold. Surprisingly, those who died purely from freezing were in the minority. A month has passed in the blink of an eye, and now it's February 28th, 2034. Inside the cabin, the 5 of us huddled around the stove, with Thomas holding a book, narrating his story. An image of peaceful times. Tomorrow marks the arrival of March, yet the temperature remains unyielded. It's hard to know if spring will bring any hope of renewal. Half a month later, just as planned, we ran out of supplies. Fortunately, the temperatures began to rise. It's unclear how much it warmed outside, but the temperature inside our cabin increased by 3 degrees. Looking outside from the window, the snow seemed not as thick, revealing the tops of buried vehicles. It wasn't that the snow had melted, rather, it had sublimated under the sun's rays. Thomas mentioned that there was still food in his car, leftovers from what his company had provided. If we retrieved that food, it could sustain us for a while longer. I vehemently disagreed. Despite the temperature rise, no one could be sure whether leaving would lead to freezing to death. I couldn't let him risk it, even if we were to die. I wanted us to be together as a family, through these hard times. We had grown to regard each other as the closest of kin. Thomas was stubborn this time, insisting on going. He argued that any slight chance of survival was worth trying to extend our lives. I couldn't stop him, and watched helplessly as he prepared to leave. Unable to control myself any longer, I rushed to him, hugged him, and kissed him, tears streaming down my face. Thomas, promise me you'll come back. He gently wiped away my tears, soothing me with a soft voice. Be careful of frostbite, don't worry. For you and the kids, I'll do everything to return. Eventually, he left, dressed in the oversized cold-weather gear I had adjusted for him, fully equipped for the journey. His car was parked on the road by our apartment complex entrance, only about 300 meters from our building. That was why Thomas felt compelled to go. Hope was literally just around the corner, and he couldn't just watch it slip away. I kept watch with a telescope, monitoring his every move. I saw him exit the building, saw his body sink slightly into the snow which had hardened. He trudged forward, each step arduous, but he persevered. Finally, he reached the car, chopping at the door with an axe. After what seemed like an eternity, he managed to pry it open. He laboriously packed the food into a box, tied it with a rope, and began dragging it back. What I didn't know was that beneath his thick clothes he was sweating from the exertion. Finally, he safely entered the building, disappearing from my view. A foreboding feeling crept into my heart. I quickly dressed in thick clothes, grabbed 2 daggers, and ran down the stairs. On the 5th-floor landing, I saw 3 men fighting. One of them was Thomas, clearly weakened. He was no match for the other 2. His axe had been knocked away, and he was moments away from being stabbed. I sprinted forward and plunged a dagger into one of the attackers, saving Thomas, realizing what happened. Thomas picked up the axe from the ground and struck the other man who was about to attack me with a kitchen knife. In that critical moment, Thomas was quicker, killing the man before collapsing from exhaustion. I rushed to help him up, checking for injuries. Fortunately, his protective gear had absorbed most of the impact, and he was only slightly injured. After resting briefly and once Thomas had regained some strength, we carried the supplies back up together. With these supplies, we managed to hold on for nearly another month, until we finally heard the sound of rescue helicopters outside. That sound, like music from heaven, seemed to pull us out of a dire situation. Thomas, the kids, and I made our way to the rooftop, frantically waving at the helicopter. Slowly, more and more survivors appeared on other rooftops, once rescued and brought to an underground city. We settled down and started anew. A few days later, my parents and brother were also rescued. Seeing them again, I couldn't help but burst into tears. There were no signs of Thomas's family among the survivors in the underground city, indicating they hadn't made it through. Thomas had long come to terms with his selfish family members. According to official announcements, this disaster will last for many years. Even in the summer, the temperature outside will remain below -40 degrees. Therefore, our future homes will be permanently situated in underground cities. For us, as long as we can be with the people we care about and live well, even underground can feel like heaven.